Chapter 5097. Old Madam Qin originally wanted to drag Old Master Fu home to nag at him, but when she came in, she saw Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan. Old Madam Qin, who had something on her mind, sat down and chatted with them with a smile on her face. Li Jinyan had a dull personality and only spoke his mind. However, when it came to serious matters, he always hit the nail on the head and was very insightful. Therefore, even if he had a dull personality, people would not find him boring. On the contrary, they would think that he was very reliable. Xia Jinyuan was different. He had been a devil since he was young. He was good at talking and understanding. Every time he spoke, the three elders would listen quietly and nod from time to time. In the end, old Madam Qin smiled at old Master Fu and said, You really enjoy both sides of the family. Your grandson and granddaughter are promising, and your grandson-in-law is also a top talent. Are you smiling even in your dreams? Enjoying both sides of the family meant that the middle part of the family was hard, while the front and back were blessed. Old Master Fu was indeed like that. Old Master Fu was born in a big family. When he was young, he had a group of servants to serve him. When he was middle-aged, he wandered around and lost his son and wife. In his later years, when Yi Qian came back, he felt more and more comfortable every day. Old Master Fu laughed. His voice was old but strong. It was obvious that he was a strong old man. It's all thanks to them. Otherwise, how can I sit here and chat? If it were a few years ago, my feet would have entered the yellow earth and turned into ashes. When he spoke of Li Jinyan and Xia Jinyuan, they both panicked. Li Jinyan said in a deep voice, You have better days ahead of you. Of course, I still want to hold my great-grandchildren. When old Master Fu mentioned great-grandchildren, the three elders started to talk about great-grandchildren again. Old Madam Qin and Old Master Qin already had grandchildren, but there was no sign of the great-grandchild they wanted to hold the most. Their most beloved grandson, Qin Xiu, didn't even have a girlfriend. Where could they go to hold their great-grandchild? Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan could not say anything about this topic. Li Jinyan used the excuse that he needed to go back to the Li family to take a look and took the opportunity to leave. He left the marriage and children to Xia Jinyuan alone. On the other hand, this guy who was anxious to marry his sister would like to talk about this topic very much. He was in a hurry to leave. Xia Jinyuan naturally stood up and said that he would send him off. Yes, it was very important to send his brother-in-law off, to hold his great-grandchildren for the old master. Sigh, how could he, who was still a virgin, give birth to a child's? When the three elders saw that the two young people were about to flee, they couldn't help but shake their heads. Seeing that the two young people were about to leave, old Madam Qin suddenly exclaimed and stood up with her hands on her legs. I still have something to say to Jinyan. I almost forgot. Old Master Fu immediately raised his voice and called for the two who were running away to come back and help old Madam Qin. The two grandsons obediently came back. Xia Jinyuan whispered, Judging from your voice, old Master Fu can live another 100 years. Do you want to? Li Jinyan asked coldly. Xia Jinyuan choked. He really did not want to. Then you can live another 20 years. He had to win back the situation. Li Jinyan did not rebuke him. He also hoped that he could live another 20 years. They supported old Madam Qin until they left the courtyard. Old Madam Qin smiled at Xia Jinyuan. How are you and Unyielding recently? Although you're both in the army, it's still rare to see you. The sudden mention of Yi Qian reminded them of Mrs. Qin's complaints in front of old Master Fu yesterday. Their expressions suddenly turned cold, and they faintly felt that old Madam Qin had something to tell them. Chapter 5098. Xia Jinyuan smiled politely and replied, Thank you for your concern, Grandma Qin. Jane Eyre and I are very close. I just spoke to her on the phone a while ago. That's good, that's good. That girl has suffered a lot. You have to treat her well. Granny Qin may not be the girl's biological grandmother, but she has a good relationship with your grandmother. If you bully the girl, Granny Qin won't let you off easily. So it's not meant to be. Shower likes that girl, but she's a couple with a guy with a family Xia. It's too late even if Xiu likes her. Xia Jinyuan repeatedly said, I don't dare. Then He talked about how Yi Qian had graduated from the military academy last year and was now working in the army. Grandma Qi nodded as she listened. That's good, that's good. That girl is good. She has a foothold wherever she goes. She's not like what some people say. Here it comes. Xia Jinyuan and Li Jingyan looked at each other with Mrs. Qin in the middle. Their handsome faces were somewhat serious as they prepared to listen to what Mrs. Qin would say next. Today, the wife and daughter of the deputy chief of staff, Du, came to visit Grandma with your Auntie Yu. They mentioned that girl. The mother and daughter didn't know about your relationship with Miss Jian, so they said a lot of unpleasant things about her. Mrs. Qin wasn't familiar with the Du and Li families. As for the Li family, she was somewhat familiar with them. However, she had never had any contact with the Du family. Now that Madame Li brought her daughter, Du Jiai, to the Qin family to badmouth Yi Qian, how could Mrs. Qin hide it? In addition, Mrs. Qin didn't have a good impression of old Madame Li's son and daughter because of the things she had done when she was young. Madame Li still thought that she was born in a big family. Little did she know that she would always be an illegitimate daughter in the eyes of the older generation. Now, she even came to speak in front of Mrs. Qin. She was simply digging her own grave. I don't think the mother and daughter are easy to deal with. The daughter looks dignified and sophisticated, but her mind is too active and has lost her purity. She resembles her grandmother. When she was young, old Madame Li successfully entered the Li family with her beautiful and innocent appearance. She climbed into old man Li's bed and finally angered her elder sister who adopted her to death. Du Jiai suddenly came over and bowed to admit her mistake, which reminded old Madame Qin of the past. She became vigilant against Du Jiai, who was flexible. The mother and daughter who left Dangue Garden never thought that the biggest obstacle that made it impossible for Du Jiai to marry into the Qin family was not Yi Qian, but old Madame Qin. The mother and daughter thought that Qin Xiu liked Unyielding, so they came to me in person and said a lot. Seeing that the mother and daughter resented Unyielding, and that there was a deputy chief of staff Du in their family with real power, I was afraid that the mother and daughter would follow the elder's temper and do bad things secretly. You two remind Unyielding to be careful and don't let anyone take advantage of her. How could old Madame Qin be fooled by Du Jiai's little tricks? The more she acted like this, the more old Madame Qin felt that the mother and daughter were cunning and she had to be careful. Otherwise, with her identity, she wouldn't say such degrading words at all. The mother and daughter kept old Madame Qin's words in mind. Before Li Jingyan finished his visit, Xia Jinyuan told him that someone was investigating Yi Qian's information. Li Jingyan, who had returned to the Li family for 4 days, stood by the windowsill with cold eyes. Old man Li, who immediately sat in a wheelchair when he came back, tended to the flowers and plants, and also taught his second wife how to trim the flowers and plants. The play downstairs was in a good mood. Li Jingyan, who was handsome and indifferent, asked calmly, did they use the Du family's connections or the Li family's connections? Chapter 5099. There was a big difference between using the Li family's connections and the Du family's connections. If the Du family's connections were used, it meant that the deputy chief of staff Du was involved and supported his wife and daughter. If the Li family's connections were used, then it was very likely that the deputy chief of staff Du was unaware of what Madame Li had done. Xia Jinyuan, who had already returned to the army, curved his thin lips slightly. The Li family's connections. Ever since Li Chuhai's death, the deputy chief of staff, Du, has been very strict with Madame Li and has instructed his subordinates not to make any moves. Madame Li might be able to make use of the Li family's connections, but why would old man Li be willing to do so? Li Jingyan retracted his gaze from outside the window and pulled the curtain shut. He sat back down on the sofa he usually used for reading. His straight and slender legs were casually crossed, and there was a hint of laziness in his icy temperament. Someone has to come forward to continue investigating Li Chuhai's death. How can someone who pretends to be paralyzed at home come forward? That's true. We need someone reliable and trustworthy. Madame Li is indeed the best candidate. Xia Jinyuan sneered. The Li family was starting to make moves again. The more moves they made, the faster they would be defeated. What about your second uncle? Is there a problem? At the mention of Li Ronghuan, Li Jinyan's cold face became slightly stern. Li Ronghuan needs to be investigated. There's something wrong with him. Xia Jinyuan sighed after a long while. Is everyone in the Li family a freak? Why don't you give up being a good person and insist on testing the law? He felt that his words were too general and included his future brother-in-law. He hurriedly added, "You're the only one who hasn't gone astray. Old master has taught you well." Li Jinyan's eyes were cold. Xia Jinyuan pretended not to hear him and said, "There's something wrong with Li Ronghuan too. How did you find out when you were home? He's abroad most of the time and doesn't live in the country. It's difficult to investigate him. Moreover, you can't investigate him just because you think there's something wrong with him. You need an excuse." Xia Jinyuan had been cursing silently for a long time. The Li family, which was born as a warlord, had always been a family with bad debts. All of them were known for being ruthless. Now, the results were still the same. Could it be that the way they did things was inherited? If the upper beam is crooked, then the lower beam will be crooked generation after generation. Fortunately, his brother-in-law had boarded at the school when he was in junior high school. Later, he was personally raised by the old man and became a clear stream in the Li family. While he was silently cursing, Li Jinyan said indifferently, "His 3 students in the country aren't well known, and the highest bid for a painting can be sold for his 8 figures. Start with the painting price." After Li Jinyan finished speaking, Xia Jinyuan furrowed his brows. "You suspect that he's been laundering money?" He didn't expect Li Ronghuan, who was thought to be the least like a member of the Li family, to be such a vicious person. After being away for so many years, how much dirty money had been laundered by him? How much could he have laundered in the country? Xia Jinyuan's mouth was pressed tightly. His dark eyes were cold. "Do you have any leads to file a case?" There was no way to deal with money laundering abroad, but there was a way to deal with it domestically. "How do you plan to investigate Li Ronghuan?" Xia Jinyuan asked again. He had to ask clearly. The Li family wanted to deal with Yi Qian, even though the Li family hadn't found out who killed Li Chuhai. Li Jinyan's expression turned colder. "I don't have a plan." Chapter 5100. Xia Jinyuan took a deep breath and answered resolutely. However, he also had clues on his side, and he might have a new breakthrough if he connected the dots. The company that Li Chuhai took over after returning to China is currently in liquidation and has filed for bankruptcy. The person in charge is Li Yuan. The bankruptcy filing and liquidation of all the information can also be used to launder money. Old man Li wanted to find out who killed Li Chuhai, and he had already started investigating what happened more than 20 years ago. Even Yi Qian's mother, Sun Xueqing, was included in his investigation. Fortunately, Commander-in-Chief Xia was one step ahead and erased all traces in advance. In addition, Li Chuhai deliberately erased all traces of Sun Xueqing. So old man Li had no clues, even though he already had some suspicions. He also didn't know who the soldier that his son ordered to kill was. In addition, old man Li had a stroke, and the deputy chief of staff was implicated because of Mrs. Li, so the two families had to be honest. In less than 3 years, they started again after Li Ronghuan frequently returned to China. This time, their actions were much bigger than before. The two exchanged information with each other. Old man Li, who was pretending to be trimming the flowers and plants outside, said with a gloomy face, "Why hasn't he left yet? Ronghuan will be back in the afternoon. Find a way to get him out as soon as possible." Ronghuan, born of the first wife, was now old man Li's most trusted son. As for the eldest son's family, old man Li didn't even want to acknowledge the eldest son if it wasn't for the fact that his second wife was introduced to him by the second wife. Old man Li didn't want an eldest son who didn't care about his younger brother and didn't help him at all after the incident. Old Lady Li, who was holding a pair of scissors in her hand, cut off a leaf with a click. She looked in the direction of the second floor with deep disgust in her eyes. She had always been good at pretending. She was obviously disgusted, but in the blink of an eye, she could pretend to be kind and magnanimous. Jinyan wants to come back. As his grandmother, how can I stop him? Master, the most important thing for you now is to relax and take care of your body. Although Rong Huan came back, she was not my biological daughter after all. Also, Master, to tell you something you don't like to hear, Rong Huan is too gloomy. I don't dare to talk to him. I feel that Rong Huan still blames me for what happened in the past. Master, you intend to let Rong Huan investigate Chu Hai's matter, but why do I feel so uneasy? How could old Madam Shaoli be at ease to let the first wife's son, who had been tormented by her, investigate her own son's death? Old Manly didn't take it seriously and replied firmly, "Don't worry, it's best to leave it to Rong Huan." "All right, don't worry about it. Think of a way." Before Li Jinyan could finish his sentence, a servant rushed over. Li Jinyan, who had just ended the call, stood up and saw Old Man Li, who was pretending to be trimming the flowers and plants, being pushed back into the house by a servant. Li Jinyan looked at the luggage that had been packed and placed at the end of the bed. It was just a small navy blue luggage. He picked it up and left. Before he went downstairs, he heard an unfamiliar voice. "Why are you still in a wheelchair home? Doesn't Annie know how to take care of people? Do you want me to hire a few good caregivers to take care of you?" This voice was a little careless and rude, and it was a little arrogant, as if she didn't take Old Lady Li seriously. Li Jinyan stopped in his tracks. Chapter 5101. Li Ronghuan was the first person to leave the Li family. In the eyes of the world at that time, he was a rebellious, ignorant, and incompetent person. He liked painting and was destined to achieve nothing. He was also the first son that Old Manly gave up on. Now that he was back at the age of 48, even if he was wearing a navy blue suit, he still gave people a sense of incompatibility. He was talking to old Madame Shaoli, and his indifferent tone made old Madame Shaoli furious. "Aunt." He actually called her aunt again. Was he reminding her of something? "Old master, you talk to Ronghuan. I won't stand here and be an eyesore." Old Madame Shaoli couldn't tolerate being despised by the children left behind by the first wife. She had tolerated enough in the past. Now that she was the mistress of the Li family, did she still need to care about the looks of the bastard left behind by the first wife? Li Ronghuan tugged at the corner of his mouth and sneered. "I haven't seen Aunt for 18 years, and Aunt's temper is worse than before. Aunt was so gentle when she was young. Why did she become so hot-tempered when she was old? It seems that Aunt has worked hard for the family matters. She was originally gentle, but now she has become hot-tempered." Old Madame Shaoli had a headache from Li Ronghuan calling her aunt again and again. Now that she heard his sarcastic words, old Madame Shaoli almost fainted from anger. Old Madame Shaoli was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood, but she didn't show any dissatisfaction on her face. She just sighed helplessly. "Ronghuan, you haven't been home for 18 years. You'd better accompany old master and talk to him for a while. We're all family. Why are you so angry? If you don't want to see me, I won't appear in front of you. Don't make old master feel uncomfortable in front of him." After saying that, she raised her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes and turned back to the room. Because she needed to take care of old master, she made the guest room at the end of the first floor into the master bedroom. Old Man Li's face was as dark as water, seeing that his second wife, who had accompanied him for decades, was so angry that she went back to the room because of his second son. He slapped the armrest of the wheelchair hard and scolded. "Ronghuan, how can you talk to your mother like that? Apologize to your mother." Old Madame Shaoli, who turned back to the room, had a cold smile in her eyes and slowed down a little. Fight with her? She couldn't win against her in the past, and she wouldn't be able to win against her now either. Li Ronghuan smiled casually, not taking Old Man Li's words seriously at all. "Dad, my mother's been lying underground for decades. If you want me to apologize to her, I have to go back to the ancestral land of the Li family." Old Madame Li, who was so angry that she slowed down her pace, even slanted her steps. She didn't stop and quicken her pace back to her room. No. She was worried about letting Li Ronghuan investigate Chu Hai's matter. She had to discuss it with her daughter. She had to make her husband change his mind. Before she returned to her room, she heard Li Ronghuan laugh and say, "All right, I won't talk about it anymore." However, I didn't expect little Aunt to be so petty now. She would return to her room immediately after I said a few words. She wasn't like this in the past. No matter what we say, Andy will just admit that it's her fault and that it has nothing to do with us. Sigh. Time has passed too quickly. I haven't answered for 18 years. Old friends have changed with time. The door gently closed, and the click of the lock seemed to tell Old Man Lee that Li Ronghuan wasn't angry. He just wanted to go back to his room. Old Man Li returned to her room, and Li Ronghuan didn't say anything more. Old Man Li didn't force him to apologize. He glanced at Li Ronghuan with his turbid eyes and said in a deep voice, "You, come with me to the study." Chapter 5102. Old Man Li was in a hurry to go to the study to avoid Li Jinyan upstairs, but Li Jinyan had already heard everything. "I heard Jinyan is back. Where is he?" Li Ronghuan pretended not to hear him. He turned around and looked upstairs. "Is he still sleeping upstairs? Brat, don't you know second uncle is back?" On the second floor, Li Jinyan, who had been listening for a while, slowly retreated to his room. Then he opened and closed the door again before slowly walking up to the first floor. Footsteps could be heard coming from the stairs. Old Man Li's angry rebuke came from downstairs. "Why do you care about an outsider? Second uncle?" In his eyes, the Li family is an outsider. Li Ronghuan turned a deaf ear and sped up the stairs. Before he reached the second floor, he stopped and looked up at the young man standing at the stairs. "Jinyan, long time no see." Li Ronghuan smiled with deep surprise on his face. At 48 years old, he didn't look old. He had the casual temperament of an artist from head to toe. Li Ronghuan resembled old Madame Li the most. When he smiled, the corners of his eyes curved. When he smiled, it made people feel like he was a few years younger. Li Jinyan looked at the middle-aged man who smiled at him. He saw a sense of familiarity on the man's face. He realized he and Li Ronghuan somewhat resembled each other. He didn't look like his father, but he looked like his uncle. Some of the past surged up like a tide. Li Jinyan couldn't help but tighten his grip on the camouflage travel bag. "Master, I'm not being paranoid. Look at Jinyan. His nose, his mouth. Why do they look so much like Ronghuan? He really doesn't look like Old Man Yu's eldest son at all. The more I look at him, the more he looks like Old Man Yu's second son. I've never seen a nephew who looks so much like uncle. Isn't that so? The first time I almost thought he was Ronghuan's child. He can't really be Ronghuan's child, right? Isn't there a paternity test now? Should we check it out? How can he look so much like uncle?" Rumors and slanders accompanied his parents' arguments. Later, a paternity test was done, and it was confirmed that he wasn't second uncle's child. Later, the rumors died down, and his mother became more and more silent. In the end, she fell ill and passed away, leaving him alone to face the entire Li family. It seemed that Li Ronghuan did not return home much at that time. Later, she left home completely. In his memory, he had met Li Ronghuan once 11 years ago. But just now, he heard Li Ronghuan say that she had not returned home for 18 years. So when he saw Li Ronghuan 11 years ago, he was the only one who saw him? He didn't speak for a long time, and there was still a trace of unfamiliarity in his eyes. Li Ronghuan's smile deepened, and a few more wrinkles appeared around his curved eyes. "Good boy. Don't tell me you don't even recognize second uncle." "I'm your second uncle, Li Ronghuan." "Do you remember? Could it be that the army is so busy that your memory deteriorates?" She was very enthusiastic. As she spoke, there was deep concern in her eyes. This made Li Jinyan, who had never received concern from the Li family, feel very unfamiliar. He slowly loosened his grip and nodded. "Second uncle. So you still remember that I'm your second uncle. It's good that you didn't forget. It's good that you didn't." Li Ronghuan's smile towards Li Jinyan was much more genuine. He didn't even see Old Man Li downstairs. His gaze fell on the camouflage travel bag in Li Jinyan's hand. Li Ronghuan's smile faded. "Second uncle just came back, and you're already going back to the army?" Chapter 5103. They hadn't seen each other for 11 years. The way Li Jinyan looked at Li Ronghuan was strange. He didn't know Li Ronghuan at all. Faced with a stranger's smile and care, Li Jinyan was completely indifferent. What's more, Li Jinyan had a big problem. As a soldier, Li Ronghuan would keep a distance from him. He nodded slightly and only replied with a yes. Old Man Lee was so angry that he pushed his wheelchair to the stairs on the first floor. He looked up and saw Li Jinyan standing at the stairs on the second floor, looking at Li Ronghuan coldly. Then he saw Li Jinyan only reply with a yes to his uncle. Anger instantly gushed out from his heart. He slammed his dry hands on the armrest of the wheelchair and scolded loudly. Is this the attitude of a junior to an elder in the family? The Li family doesn't owe you anything. Who do you think you're showing a straight face to? Li Jinyan was Old Man Li's eldest grandson, but he had never been loved by Old Man Li. He didn't love him when he was young, and it was even more impossible for him to love him when he grew up. Now that he had caught him, Old Man Li was even more impolite and directly scolded him. Ronghuan, let him go. The Li family is small and can't accommodate a big Buddha like him. After that, Old Man Li turned his wheelchair and leaned to the side of the stairs. He raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the door. There was only deep disgust in his eyes when he glanced at Li Jinyan. Get out. Get out of here now. Don't ever come back to the Li family. The Li family doesn't have an unfilial grandson like you. Get out. Standing on the second floor, Li Jinyan looked down at the flustered and exasperated old man who just wanted him to get out of the Li family. He hadn't seen him for more than 2 years, and he had aged a lot. He was old, but his heart was not. Even his eyes were not old. They were still filled with hostility that should not belong to an old man. Li Jinyan didn't want to go back to the Li family either. He didn't want to step into this dirty old house unless he had no other choice. When he withdrew his gaze, Li Jinyan seemed to inadvertently glance at Li Ronghuan's face. He lowered his gaze and saw that his second uncle, whose back was facing Old Man Li, had his hands clenched into fists. As for his expression, he was expressionless. They walked down the stairs from the second floor. Just as they were about to pass each other, Li Ronghuan suddenly reached out and grabbed the strap of Li Jinyan's travel bag. He smiled and said, "Let's go. Second uncle will take you. Airport or train station. The bus station is fine too." Li Ronghuan, you. Old Man Li, who was downstairs, was so angry that his hands trembled. Why are you sending him off? This kind of bastard, Li Ronghuan, who was secretly competing with Li Jinyan to bring the travel bag over, turned around and said to Old Man Li, who was trembling with anger, "Dad, the doctor said your blood pressure is high and you need a rest. Why do you always get angry over small things? Jinyan is my nephew and your eldest grandson. You're scolding him as well as yourself. Let Annie help you rest. I haven't seen Jinyan in a long time. I want to talk to him." In the master bedroom, old Madame Xiao Li was talking to her daughter. When she heard the angry scolding outside, old Madame Xiao Li continued with a cold expression. "Li Ronghuan has been scheming since he was young. You and Chu Hai suffered a lot in his hands. This time, he suddenly came back. Your father even handed the investigation of Chu Hai's death to him. I'm really worried. Chenglan, when you have time, go home and persuade your father. See if he can let you investigate in secret or let Yuan Air do it." Sitting next to Madame Li, Li Yuan waved his hand. Madame Li glanced at her son and replied in a low voice, "Mom, don't worry. I'll find time to go home as soon as possible. There are guests at home, so I can't talk to you for now. I'll call you later." Chapter 5104. Hearing that there was a guest at her daughter's house, old Madame Li hung up the phone without saying anything more. The Li family was secretly investigating the cause of Li Chuhai's death, and she did not want anyone to know about it. Mrs. Li hung up the phone and said with a sullen face, "Yuan, what do you want to talk to me about?" "Mom, don't promise Grandma. Second uncle is not a simple man. I ran into a lot of trouble when I was dealing with Uncle's company, and second uncle helped me out. Although second uncle is an artist, he knows a lot of people. I ran into a few problems, and he solved them all with one phone call. Grandma asked you to help me again. I don't want her to fall out with second uncle because of Grandma." Hearing these words, Mrs. Li's sullen face gradually turned better. She thought that something big had happened. Someone is giving face to your second uncle. That is because they're giving face to your grandpa. It has nothing to do with your second uncle. Having said these words, Mrs. Li got up immediately. "Come back to the Li family with me. Your second uncle is there, Let's go and meet him. Why do you want to meet second uncle? We just met. Li Yuan did not want to go. Although his surname was Li, his grandpa and grandma did not really treat him as a member of the Li family. Every time he went to the Li family, he felt very awkward. Mrs. Li did not force her son. Li Yuan was already 27 years old, and it was useless to force him. While she was rushing back to the Li family to see Li Ronghuan was sending Li Jinyan back to the Fu family, while old Master Li was panting in anger. When he heard that Li Jinyan had returned to the Fu family, Li Ronghuan's hands paused for a moment before returning to normal. Growing up in the Fu family, you do have deep feelings for the Fu family, the Li family. He looked past Li Jinyan, who was sitting in the passenger seat, and then through the car window at the old mansion of the Li family, which was built during the Republic of China. His eyes turned cold. Only those with dirty hands are willing to stay in the Li family. You should go back to where you grew up. Don't dirty yourself with this dirty land. Even his voice was filled with coldness. The car started, but it didn't go very fast. Instead, it slid slowly for a short distance and finally stopped under the branches and leaves of a century-old locust tree in front of the Li family's old mansion. After pulling the handbrake, Li Ronghuan took out a box of cigarettes from the splint of the car door. He lit a cigarette and held it in his mouth before asking Li Jinyan, "Smoke?" In the face of Li Ronghuan's strange behavior, Li Jinyan, who could keep calm, nodded calmly. Ding! The sound of a lighter rang out in the narrow compartment. A pure blue flame was lit up, followed by a faint smell of smoke. Finally, the entire compartment was filled with the smell of smoke. After taking a few puffs, Li Ronghuan held the cigarette between his fingers and glanced sideways at his nephew. After staring at him for a few seconds and seeing that he didn't even move his eyebrows, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Jinyan, you're really good at keeping your cool. You were able to keep your cool when you were young, and you're even better now that you're older. Back then, you were so small. He gestured in the car. You were 7 years old, right? You were like a carrot. You carried the longevity noodles that the mistress purposely used to poison and gave them to the old man to eat. I saw with my own eyes how you stared at the mistress and how you secretly rummaged through the trash to look at the packaging. At the time, I was wondering if you would expose her with the packaging, but who knew? Thinking back to the past, the coldness in Li Ronghuan's eyes deepened. It was clearly the end of spring, and even the last of the cold had passed, but the car was filled with a heart-shaking chill. Chapter 5105. Li Jinyan, who was sitting in the passenger seat, didn't even move his eyebrows, as if he was listening to a story that had nothing to do with him. However, there was a hint of darkness in the depths of his cold black eyes that slowly fell. Li Ronghuan took a deep breath and slowly exhaled smoke rings. He pinched out the cigarette, and looked at the entrance of the Li family's old mansion with a smile. In order to make us all leave the Li family, she even dared to use a 7-year-old child like you. It's been decades. It's time to settle the score with them. The car was cold and gloomy. Li Jinyan was unmoved. He remembered everything that happened when he was young. He also remembered being coaxed by Old Man Li to bring a bowl of rat poison to Old Man Li, who was making birthday cake. He still remembered that when he brought the birthday noodles up, just as Old Man Li was about to eat, Li Chunlan, who was now Mrs. Li, suddenly rushed up and threw the bowl of birthday noodles to the ground. She pointed at his nose and shouted angrily, "Dad, he put rat poison in this bowl of noodles." Jai saw it. Jai picked up the wrapping paper. Slap! A slap landed on his face. Old Man Li, who was smiling just now, turned ferocious in the next second. "You want to poison me? How can you be so sinister at such a young age? You even want to poison your own grandfather." What did he say back then? He didn't say anything. He did want to poison his grandfather, who caused his mother's death. He clearly knew that the bowl was filled with rat poison, but he still brought it over. That was what he thought. One thing after another, he, the eldest grandson of the Li family, became the person that Old Man Li, the head of the family, hated the most. Then, rumors spread, saying that he looked so much like Li Ronghuan that he couldn't have been born from adultery. Step by step, he forced his biological father to hate him and forced him to completely lose his status in the Li family. Later, He left the Li family and returned to the Fu family, escaping from the sea of suffering. And where did Li Ronghuan go? He didn't know. After leaving the Li family, he didn't pay attention to anything or anyone in the Li family. At that time, Li Ronghuan couldn't even protect himself. He was bullied by his second wife to the point that he couldn't even raise his head. Who knew where a person who couldn't even protect himself went? Now, that Li Ronghuan came back and told him all kinds of things, he also said that he would not let the Li family go. Li Jinyan was not tempted. He was not tempted by the words of a suspicious person. He was only alert. Li Jinyan's expression was indifferent, as if he had not been aroused by the past. He raised his hand to look at the time. It was still early, so he continued to sit indifferently and let Li Ronghuan continue. He needed to know more about Li Ronghuan, so let him talk more. When he was done, it was time to get off the car. Li Jinyan didn't make any moves, but Li Ronghuan didn't care. This nephew of his was very capable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to leave the Li family alive, which was a ruthless place that ate people up without spitting out their bones. He even made it into the army and became a lieutenant colonel at such a young age. It was equivalent to adding the most protective shield for himself. No matter how much the old bastard hated him, he would not dare to do anything else. As for the mistress who had entered the house, she could only scheme against her at home. Who would give her face when she was outside? No one. Li Ronghuan lit a second cigarette for himself. People who were in the art world were more or less addicted to smoking. Li Ronghuan was not a heavy smoker, but he really wanted to smoke at this moment. He didn't need Li Jinyan to say anything, so he just listened. It was not a good thing for a soldier to be loose with words. Silence made him look more mature. Li Ronghuan felt very happy. Chapter 5106. The smell of smoke in the enclosed car grew stronger. Li Jinyan's first action after getting in the car was to roll down the window to let fresh air into the car. Li Ronghuan couldn't help but laugh at his actions. "You don't smoke, right? Do you want me to put out?" "No need," Li Jinyan replied calmly. Li Ronghuan leaned against the steering wheel and chuckled for a while. Ah Fong said that eldest young master has a cold personality and is a little strange. Yes, he's a little strange, but I like it. Ah Fong. Li Jinyan's originally cold and handsome face suddenly sharpened. His gaze was like a cold arrow shooting towards Li Ronghuan, who was still leaning against the steering wheel. Li Ronghuan happened to be waiting calmly, his face full of ridicule. "Oh, you're finally paying attention to me. Ah Fong is my man. Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" "Ha ha ha." He laughed out loud. Li Jinyan's gaze returned to normal. The servant who had been watching the Li family for him was actually the man in front of him who hated his second uncle so much when he mentioned the Li family. Back then, it wasn't sister-in-law who did him a favor. It was me who did him a favor. Jinyan, Jinyan, there's something wrong with you. You're too guarded. Ah Fong spent a lot of effort to gain your trust. That year, when I came back to see you, I actually wanted to tell you that Ah Fong was trustworthy. I didn't say it myself, but you spoke to Ah Fong instead. In other words, when he saw Li Ronghuan 11 years ago, he actually came for him. Li Jinyan's unmoving brows finally furrowed a little. What a scary Li Ronghuan. Ah Fong also told me that you came back to the Li family this time. I also know why you came back. After laughing, Li Ronghuan looked at the face that resembled him. You and I are similar because you're like your grandmother. She deliberately spread rumors because you and I are the people she was most afraid of. The place where the car was parked was the place where the mistress dragged her illegitimate son and daughter to kneel in the heavy rain. In the past, this was the Li family's mansion. There were high walls and magnolia trees in the corners. It was also the place where your grandmother liked to take a walk after she was fed. Later, it became the place that your grandmother didn't want to go the most. After her miscarriage, she passed away in depression and hatred. This memory was Li Ronghuan's deepest, most painful, and most hated memory. He would always remember that scene, and he would always remember that his mother had a miscarriage because of it. She had held on to her last breath to wait for him to study abroad for less than half a year before she passed away. When the mistress of the house entered and became the mistress of the Li family, All the magnolia trees were cut down. In the end, all traces of your grandmother and the Lee family were gone. Not a single trace was left. I wanted to find a picture for you to see so that you would know who you look like. I searched through the entire Lee family, but there was not a single picture of your grandmother. All the pictures were destroyed, and not a single one was saved. No matter how calm he was, at the mention of the rumors that caused his biological mother to pass away in depression, the cold Lee Jinyin couldn't help but clench his fists. His expression became especially forbearing. Jinyin continued to be a clean person, develop well in the army, and become an indomitable man. Leave the outside matters to second uncle. In the end, you'll see the result that you want to see the most. The Lee family is too dirty. Second uncle is dirty, but you're still clean. You didn't dirty the Lee family at all. In the future, this is not a place you should come to. If there's anything you want to know, Ah Fong will tell you the truth. Let's go. I'll send you to the Fu family. A clean Fu family. Li Ronghuan started the car with a smile on his face. The gloominess from before was nowhere to be seen. He was even in a good mood and whistled. He was almost 50 years old, so he looked surprisingly young. Chapter 5107. Li Jinyan, who was born in the Li family and had no one to rely on since childhood, did not immediately let down his guard in the face of Li Ronghuan's kindness. However, Li Ronghuan's words were like a stone thrown into a lake, causing ripples in his heart. Looking at his watch for the third time, Li Jinyin said lightly, "Uncle, I'm in a hurry. If you have something to do, I can go home by myself." "Brat, do you think I talk too much?" Li Ronghuan put down the handbrake and started the car. "Remember what I said. You have me in the Li family. You should be a good soldier and serve your country well. Don't get involved in these messy things. By the way, Li Chuhai's son, Li Jun, have you seen him? He looks so much like his mistress. I almost slapped him in the face the first time I saw him. I have to take him with me often in the future. I guess I have to tie something to my hand. If I accidentally slap him, he will hate me." Li Jinyin glanced at a window on the second floor of the Li family's house. It turned out that Li Jun lived in the room where the door was closed and the servant only sent food to. The car drove away from the Li family's house. On the second floor, someone slowly opened a small corner of the curtain and left the room to go to the first floor. On the first floor, Old Man Li, who was served by Old Lady Li, was drinking water. Hearing the sound of footsteps from upstairs, he smiled. Even Old Lady Li smiled. "Junior." The two elders spoke at the same time. Their voices were so kind as if they were afraid of disturbing the young man downstairs. The man downstairs was about 26 or 27 years old. His skin was particularly white, which was unhealthy because he had not been exposed to the sun for a long time. His facial features were feminine. Although handsome, there was a trace of malice between his eyebrows, which made people know that it was better not to provoke him. His facial features were somewhat similar to Old Lady Li's when she was young. Li Chuhai's eldest son came from Old Lady Li's bloodline, so naturally there were some similarities. Li Jun, who came downstairs, was very gloomy. His eyebrows and the corners of his mouth were pressed tightly. Facing the greetings of the two elders, he just said, and walked to the single sofa and sat down. "Uncle, did you treat him very well before?" Li Jun opened his mouth. Because he was born and lived abroad, he had an accent in his Mandarin. His voice was slightly sharp, so it was very recognizable. Old Madame Shaoli was angry. Seeing that her own grandson was angry, she hurriedly said, "We haven't seen each other for 18 years. We aren't familiar with each other. How can it be good? June, now that you've returned home, you should have a good rest. If you have time, you should go out for a walk. Leave the rest of the matters to your second uncle to handle. The most important thing is your body." Li Jun indifferently looked at his grandmother, who was looking at him with a nervous face. His cold face suddenly smiled. "Grandma, I'm in good health. I just don't like to bask in the sun. Everything in the family is handed over to second uncle to handle. Then is there a need for me to return to China? I'm not a child. There are some things that I have to deal with myself. For example, killing my father's murderer with my own hands." It was clearly a smile, but every word was dyed with a cold aura, which made old Madame Xiao Li so anxious that her expression changed. Master, quickly persuade June. He just returned to the country, so he can't act according to his temperament. This is not Melibon. You can't mess around. The last sentence was said to Li Jun. Old man Li was not anxious at all. That pair of glassy eyes that had become cloudy shot out a sharp gaze. He first looked Li Jun up and down, as if to confirm something, but also as if he wanted to discover something. Li Jun let him look at him. There was a faint arrogance that showed that he did not put old man Li in his eyes. Chapter 5108. The two men didn't speak. Old Madame Li was so anxious that she kept squeezing her hands. Now she didn't dare to speak. After at least 3 minutes, old man Li, who didn't speak, suddenly laughed. Good, good, good. You're worthy of being my Li family's son. You're so fierce and energetic. He was quite satisfied with Li Jun's reaction. Your father is the son I'm most satisfied with, because your father's temperament is very similar to me when I was young. But I never thought that the one who is most like me is not your father, but you. Old Madame Li, who was secretly anxious like an ant on a hot nest, calmed down. She sat down elegantly and took care of old man Li more carefully. June, ask me for advice in the future. Don't make me angry, okay? June was the one who was most like old master. Good, good, good. With this sentence, she would be relieved even after 100 years. So what if she was the first wife? Ha ha. The one who had the last laugh was still her. After 100 years, her name would still be on the tombstone of old master, and she would still be with old master. So what if she was the first wife? The 2 sons she left were living well now, but they were all disliked by old master. Even Li Ronghuan, who was working now, old master only smiled a little because he knew how to do things. The one who was really liked by old master was her grandson June. The one who had the last laugh was still her. In the face of old man Li's praise, Li Jun just raised his eyebrows slightly without much surprise, as if he deserved this praise and didn't need to be surprised. The more old man Li looked at him, the more he liked him. The more he looked at Li Jun, the more he felt that Li Jun was like himself when he was young. He liked to wait and wait until the prey relaxed their vigilance. Then he directly attacked. He didn't give the other party a chance to live. Men had to be ruthless when doing things. Being indecisive would not amount to anything. More importantly, he had to be on the family's side. Old Madame Li was full of joy. When she saw her daughter coming, she pulled her daughter to talk for a while. Mrs. Li was also very happy. Her nephew could be liked by old Master Li, which was a great advantage for her aunt. That's good, that's good. June and Yuan are similar in age. In the future, cousins should visit each other more often. June just returned to China. I'm afraid that he doesn't understand the domestic market. Yuan guidance. To learn more. That's right, that's right. You're the most thoughtful. June had been back in the country for more than 2 months, but he hadn't gone out at all. After Li Jinian came back, he locked himself in his room all day long. I was worried that he would get sick. It's best to let Yuan take care of him more. The 2 brothers can also take care of each other. Leslie Ronghuan secretly deceived them. While the mother and daughter were chatting in the room, Li Jun was brought into the study by old man Li and would not come out for a while. Helper A Fong left the living room and sent a text message to Li Ronghuan, telling her everything that old man Li said to Li Jun. Li Ronghuan, who had arrived at the entrance of Dangui Garden, read the message and threw the phone to Li Jinian. She was not afraid that Li Jinian would not take it or read it. The old man said that Li Jinian resembles him the most when he was young. Ha! A dog that bites doesn't bark. You'd better not go back to the Li family in the future. Stay in the Fu family. Have you considered changing your surname? It's so good to have a surname Fu. It's a famous family in Jiangnan. Old Master is also a minister of the country and has contributed his whole life to the country. If you follow the surname Fu, it'll be even cleaner. Li Jinian finished reading the text and handed the phone back. He quietly watched Li Ronghuan answer the phone. His thin lips, which had been tightly pursed, moved slightly before he asked in a clear voice, "Second uncle, why did you return to the country?" Chapter 5109. Li Jinyan's question was very technical. He asked, "Why do you want to come back?" Not, "Why do you want to come back?" Only the word "want" was missing in the middle, but the meaning was very different. The former had a specific purpose, while the latter was random. Since he had already left the Li family, why did he want to come back? Since he hated the Li family so much, why did he want to come back? Now that he was back, why did he want to come back? That was the deeper meaning behind Li Jinyan's question. He waited for Li Ronghuan's answer. He did not trust anyone from the Li family, including his second uncle, who had been friendly to him since he came back. His surname was Li, so he did not trust his biological uncle. He could not even trust his biological father. So what if he was his biological uncle? Why did he want to come back? It was not a difficult question to answer, but because the person who asked was his only nephew, Li Ronghuan needed to think carefully before he could answer. After saying so much, he thought that his nephew would know why he wanted to come back. But now it seemed that everything he said was just a stepping stone, and Li Jinyan did not believe him. Would he trust the Li family when he was a child, who had to guard against his family from hurting him? Of course not. Even he, a member of the Li family, did not trust the Li family. How could his nephew, who had suffered so much when he was a child, trust the Li family in him? Why do you want to come back? To do something important, of course. Li Ronghuan habitually took out a cigarette. This time, Li Jinyan stopped him. "Sorry, second uncle, I don't like the smell of cigarettes." At least Li Jinyan was willing to express his preferences in front of Li Ronghuan. That sentence made Li Ronghuan happy. He put away the cigarette box with a big smile. No, I won't smoke in front of you in the future. Get out of the car. Don't keep the old man waiting." He urged Li Jinyan to get out of the car. He swallowed all the words he had in mind. He did not intend to say them. Why should his nephew get involved in dirty things? The more he knew, the worse it would be for him. It was better not to know. Why did he want to come back? Of course he wanted to come back. There were still enemies in the country that had not been dealt with. How could he not return to the country? Back then, it took him several years to coax Li Chuhai back to the country. Now, Li Chuhai had been dead for more than 2 years, but the two old farts at home did not suspect him. They even eagerly asked him to investigate who killed Li Chuhai. Investigate my ass. Even if he found out something, he would only be able to pass on the information. When the time came, he would be deeply grateful and would have to properly thank his benefactor. Li Jinyan did not ask further. Since the other party was deliberately avoiding the topic, asking further would only arouse his suspicion. Then I won't ask. It would be difficult for him to find out more about the Li family in the future. The servants who stayed in the Li family were all Li Ronghuan's people. He needed to consider whether to continue contacting Fong. Was Li Ronghuan trustworthy or not? Take care. Without asking further, Li Jinyan opened the car door. His right leg stepped out of the car and landed on the ground. Li Ronghuan's voice exploded like thunder. It was not his voice that was loud, but his words that were like a sudden clap of thunder. Back then, I was the one who persuaded Li Chuhai to come back to the country. Jinyan, you cannot trust anyone in the Li family, but I, as your second uncle, can be trusted. You can choose to trust me. Li Jinyan was so shocked that he abruptly turned his head and retracted his long legs. At the same time, his cold eyes shot a piercing glare at Li Ronghuan. "Second uncle, do you know what you just said?" Chapter 5110. Li Chuhai suddenly returned to the country because of Li Ronghuan. Li Jinyan closed the open car door and sat in the car with a cold aura. His gaze was locked on Li Ronghuan, who had brought the shocking news. "Do you know what you just said?" He asked again. His voice was even colder and more intimidating. Li Chuhai was not an ordinary criminal. He was a famous Chinese in Melbourne, and his hands were stained with countless innocent lives. Even 100 deaths would not be able to wash away his sins. Now, Li Ronghuan said that he was the one who persuaded Li Chuhai to return to the country. Then, was Li Ronghuan also stained with innocent lives? Was his hands stained with blood and his body full of sins? Li Jinyan had already placed his right hand on the belt buckle. As long as Li Ronghuan's answer was different, the belt would become his weapon to catch criminals. Li Ronghuan had a calm expression on her face. She didn't think she had just said anything shocking. Her left hand casually rested on the steering wheel as she leaned in Li Jinyan's direction. She even smiled and said, I know. Get out of the car. You can't park here for a long time. The special police are here. In the end, he pushed Li Jinyan. Get out of the car. Do you want your second uncle to get arrested? I don't have my license with me. This time, it was impossible for Li Jinyan to get out of the car. Drive to the side. No, you were so rude to me just now, and now you want to blame me? Naive brat. You don't want to get out of the car? Then I can only use violence. He unfastened his seatbelt and opened the door to pull Li Jinyan out of the car. Li Jinyan waited for him to open the door before getting out of the car. The belt around his waist was pulled out as he got out of the car. The two of them stood beside the car door. One smiled, and the other looked at them coldly. The atmosphere was tense. Li Ronghuan looked at the belt and pointed at it with a smile. Are you going to pee? Go and take care of it. I won't send you off. Goodbye, nephew. Li Jinyan moved and blocked his way. Uncle, I need an explanation. Oh, explain. It's simple. He needs to launder the money, and I've been laundering it for him. After he was done, the other boss cobra was done, and I was free. Seeing Li Jinyan tighten the belt in his hand, Li Ronghuan's smile deepened. I'm just taking a bath abroad. I'm clean at home. You can't do anything to me. Oh, that's not right. They can't do anything to me overseas. Only you know that I laundered money. I've already told you my biggest secret. My nephew. Do you still not believe your own uncle? Li Ronghuan pretended to have a headache and rubbed her eyebrows. Then I can't do anything about it. You know that Ah Fong is my man. You also know that I helped Li Chuhai launder money. Why would I want to return to China? If you don't believe me, then just watch. The 100-year-old Li family has long been eaten by worms. It's time for it to fall. Putting his hands in his pockets, Li Ronghuan whistled. The melodious whistle was like him, sometimes far and sometimes close, sometimes high and sometimes low. It was impossible to see the real him. I'm leaving, nephew. If you need anything, feel free to contact me. I don't have a driver's license to show the SWAT team. He walked past Li Jinyan and reported a set of numbers. The moment he passed by Li Jinyan, he reached out and patted Li Jinyan's shoulder. He whistled happily and got into the car. Chapter 5111. Li Jinyan stood at the same spot and looked at the departing car. His brows furrowed slightly. The special forces were special forces, and the traffic police were traffic police. Only the traffic police would check a driver's license. Li Jinyan raised his head and looked at the special forces officer walking towards him. His brows furrowed even more. Why was she on duty here? Why wasn't she on duty near the train station? Nian, who was wearing the special forces uniform and black sunglasses, walked over with two male colleagues. The three of them had identification cards hanging on their chests, and it was obvious that they were on duty. She didn't recognize Li Jinyan immediately. She only recognized him when he was about 5 to 6 meters away. She raised her hand, and the male colleagues behind her stopped at the same time. Nian said in a low voice, "No problem, withdraw." So was old Master Fu's grandson, the naval officer. There shouldn't be a problem. Nian asked her colleagues to withdraw, so she naturally withdrew as well. But when she saw that the young military officer standing in front of her didn't move, his gaze landed on her. Through her sunglasses, she could see his furrowed brows. Nian secretly pouted. Why did it feel like he didn't want to see her? She didn't come over on purpose. Nian wanted to withdraw and walk straight over. I didn't want to see her? Oomph. She stood in front of him and even told him that it was his car that had stopped for more than 3 minutes. She had to remind him that it was forbidden to stop for more than 3 minutes. When Li Jinyan saw her approach, his ramrod straight body moved with the movement of his long legs, and he walked away from the spot. He wasn't walking towards Nian, but towards Dangue Garden. Just as he took out his identification card from his pocket, he heard a woman's clear voice behind him. Li Jinyan, stop right there. The sentinel didn't need to look at the identification card to recognize who it was. When he heard that the only female Special Forces officer in charge of guarding Dangue Garden had ordered old Master Fu's grandson, Lieutenant Colonel Li, to stop, the sentinel secretly squeezed his gun. This she should know him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dared to order Lieutenant Colonel Li to stop. Yin, who had impulsively ordered them to stop, was also embarrassed. Her tone, just now, didn't seem too good. Also, although she was now an armed police officer and had a military rank, but Lieutenant Colonel Lee's rank was still higher than hers. Fortunately, she was a different type of soldier. No matter how big they were, they couldn't control her. He was secretly glad that they were not from the same branch of the military. He cleared his throat and did not forget to salute them. Then he said very seriously, "Comrade, this area strictly prohibits vehicles from exceeding the limit by 3 minutes. You have exceeded the limit just now. Please be careful next time." Parking at the entrance of Dangway Garden was not allowed to exceed 3 minutes. It had always been like this, but Li Jinyan glanced at Anniversary, who was dressed in combat equipment. "This area is forbidden? Until when? You just came back, right? It will be a week until the end of the conference." Seeing his frown slowly loosen, he added, "I just came over to remind you. That's all." Li Jinyan's relaxed brows tightened again. Nian Junyan's heart also tightened. She didn't say anything wrong, right? Li Jin furrowed her eyebrows and looked at Nian, who was wearing a pair of sunglasses, seriously. She asked, "Did you think I was avoiding you?" "No, you misunderstood." Nian's lips curled into a smile. F***CK, talking to this cold guy is really tiring. I should hurry up and leave. Chapter 51:12. Due to the nature of her job, Nian had more male colleagues around her. In the past, whenever she returned to the station from the SWAT team, she would still meet female colleagues who had different jobs, and they could have a meal together. But now, ever since she came back from abroad, she had worked with the armed police during a mission. After being transferred to the armed police force, even the mosquitoes around her were male. In front of a group of men, Nian had never felt awkward. The male colleagues also didn't treat Nian, who could beat up 3 to 4 men, as a female colleague. They trained together, carried out missions together, and worked together happily. But right now, as Nian Junyan looked at Li Jinyan's indifferent expression and listened to his words, he felt especially awkward. For a moment, he regretted that he had already recognized who the other party was. Why had he walked over and made himself uncomfortable? Nian urged Li Jinyan to leave quickly. She used the sunglasses to hide her uneasiness. But the more she wanted Li Jinyan to leave, the more Li Jinyan refused to leave. Although the sunglasses covered half of her face, it didn't cover the rest of her face. Li Jinyan, who had learned how to judge a person's reaction by the minute changes in their facial expressions, pursed his lips slightly. She seemed to dislike him. Was it because he didn't admit that he was avoiding her just now? After thinking for a while, Li Jinyan said honestly, "From the changes in your facial expression, you did think that I was avoiding you." Nian's face stiffened. F***CK. Did he still have to say it out loud? Li Jinyan said calmly, "You're very sharp. I was indeed avoiding you just now." The pair of bright eyes behind the sunglasses had already widened. She stared at the man who was obviously fooling her. She really wanted to kick him. Oh, that's not right. He was such a serious and cold man. He couldn't possibly be fooling her. Then there was only one possibility. He was avoiding her for something or someone. Her widened eyes instantly narrowed, and her clear voice was cold. "Why are you avoiding me? Did you do something wrong?" She was very serious, and even her small mouth was pressed tightly. He could feel that even her breathing had changed. He was certain that if he answered that there was a problem, she would not hesitate to point the gun in her hand at him, because in her eyes, he was a dangerous person who needed to be dealt with by violence. She definitely didn't know that she was like a bird, a little bird whose feathers were fluffy and ready to strike at any time. She was completely different from her younger sister. Her younger sister was the calm and composed type, while she had a very distinct personality. At first glance, one could tell that she had a very lively personality. Birds seemed to be quite lively. They would chirp from early in the morning until late at night and would not rest. They were full of energy. Li Jinyan pondered for a while before answering. There's no reason. It's just an instinctive reaction. Because even he didn't know why. When he saw her, his first reaction was To hide. I still need to think about why the first thing I thought of when I saw you was to hide, he added honestly, sounding a little unnatural. However, when he saw that the anniversary was even more unnatural, he became very natural. Look, he wasn't the only one who was unnatural. She was the same. Nien wanted to slap herself. Why did she ask? Her heart was racing. She seemed to have been seduced by him. That's right. She seemed to have been seduced by him. His face seemed to be a little hot, inexplicably hot. Chapter 51:13. Nien wanted to confirm if she had been flirted with, but she realized that no matter how hard she looked, the tall young officer in front of her was still as cold as ever. Even his eyes were cold. He was definitely not flirting with her. She must have been overthinking. Nien thought that she was overthinking, but then she realized that she hadn't because the cold man in front of her had asked again, and he had asked several questions in a very natural manner. Are you still on duty at noon? Are there any shifts? How many shifts are there? Apart from the fact that his questions were out of her expectations, his words and actions were still as cold as ever. Nien was so frustrated that she glared at him. Do you think I will tell you? She shook her head and walked away proudly. After taking a few steps, Nien felt a little uneasy. It seemed rude to just walk away like that. Should she turn around and say goodbye? Nien turned around and closed her eyes to take a deep breath. Without looking back, she strode towards the car on duty. She decided that in the future, whenever she saw Li Jinyan, she would take the initiative to stay away from him. He walked faster than she did. Did he think that she would chase after him? Li Jinyan saw Nien walking away and vaguely felt that she had rolled her eyes at him. He frowned slightly and turned to walk away as well. Perhaps his questions were too presumptuous, and she didn't want to answer him. She didn't even give him a chance to explain before she left. Li Jinyan wanted to chase after her and explain himself, but then he realized that she was on duty and it was inappropriate for him to disturb her because of personal matters. Thus, he turned around and left. He didn't have any other intentions. He just thought that if she had a break, she could visit the Fu family. Old Master liked her very much and would be happy to see her. Li Jinyan, who was walking away with his head held high, didn't notice that Nien had turned around to look at him again. When he returned to the Fu family, he saw a note left behind by Old Master on the table. He had to go to school today and would only be home in the afternoon. In the afternoon, it was already noon. Li Jinyan decided to have lunch at home before driving to a certain university to pick up Old Master. He had not returned home for 3 years. This time, his vacation was longer with a total of 21 days. He had more than enough time to accompany the old man. After returning to work, Nien also reflected on himself. He felt that there was no need to give Li Jinyan a hard time just now. With his cold personality, he probably didn't even know why he gave him a hard time before leaving. The most important thing was that she didn't even know why she was giving him the cold shoulder. He didn't say anything wrong. She was the one asking the questions, and he answered honestly. Was it wrong to be honest? Honestly speaking, it was her fault for overthinking things. He couldn't be thinking that there was something wrong with her head, could he? Oh my God, if she really thought that way, then she would be embarrassed. Fortunately, he was from the Navy and didn't return to the capital often. She also didn't walk around this area often. After today's meeting, it might be a few years before they meet again. Who would remember what happened today when they meet again in a few years? Taking a step back, even if they were to meet again, she could take a detour. Nien, who had been mentally reconstructing himself, sat in the car on duty and cheered himself on as he ate the still warm boxed meal. She had an hour and a half break at noon. After that, she would be on duty again until 5 in the afternoon. At night, she would be patrolling nearby until 9 and would come back at 7 the next day. There was a shortage of manpower, so she had to take 2 shifts. Chapter 51:14. After finishing her lunch, Nien asked the other 2 male colleagues to take a break. She picked up her empty lunchbox and got out of the car. She walked toward the parking lot. A red light flashed on the no left turn sign, and a black sedan stopped in front of them. Anniversary, who had stuffed the empty lunchbox into the trash can, seemed to sense something and looked up. Li Jinyan, who was sitting in the car, nodded at her as a greeting. Anian almost coughed because of her own breath. Why did they meet again so soon? Was it too late for him to pretend that he hadn't discovered it? Definitely not. Anian, whose neck was stiff, also nodded slightly. Then she watched as the black car started and drove past her. It turned left and disappeared from her sight. Anian took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. She had not seen him for years, and now she was meeting him twice in one day. How terrifying! She probably would not have the chance to meet him again. Anian worked from the afternoon until 5 o'clock. She took off her helmet and put it in her arms. Then she took off her sunglasses and put them under her shirt. She smiled at a colleague who was taking a break and said, "See you tonight." "See you tonight, Captain Joe." The two male colleagues smiled. Anian was their captain. Now that they were off work, the captain had to take a look at a few locations. As the captain, Anian was always busy when she was out on a mission. At this moment, Anian had forgotten about Li Jinyan. After her colleagues left, she was about to drive to another location when she heard a strong voice behind her. At 5 o'clock, the sun had already set in the west of Beijing. The sunset glow spread across the horizon like a raging fire. In the setting sun, an old man wearing a Chinese tunic suit, who was obviously a senior intellectual, was supported by a young man. He had a kind smile on his face as he walked towards him. "It's really Anian. I almost thought I recognized the wrong person." Mr. Fu, who was smiling kindly, was very happy to see Anian, whom he had not seen for a long time. He saw Anian take off her sunglasses and recognized her immediately. It had to be said that the highly intelligent old man also had a good memory. After recognizing her, he immediately asked the driver to stop the car and said to Li Jinyan, "You should remember that girl, Ninian. She's already at the door. We have to go down and say hello." He didn't even wait for Li Jinyan to come back. He pushed open the door and got out of the car, successfully killing Li Jinyan's "I saw you this morning." When they got out of the car, Li Jinyan still wanted to say something, but the old man walked faster than him and greeted Zhou Ninian from a distance. Li Jinyan swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue and hurriedly helped the old man. "Walk slowly." Li Jinyan was afraid that the old man's body would not be able to take it after standing for 2 periods. At that moment, the old man did not even have eyes for his grandson. He only had eyes for the young policewoman whom he had taken a liking to at first sight. "Ninian, when did you transfer to the armed police? Are you so busy that you don't even have time to visit Grandpa Fu?" Seeing Li Jinyan for the 3rd time in a day, Ninian was so shocked that he was almost speechless. What was going on? He had not seen someone for a few years, and now he was seeing him for the 3rd time in a day. Miao Su adjusted his expression and immediately put on a sunny smile. "I'm sorry for making you worry. I went out to study for a year, and after I came back, I changed my position and have been training in the team." Zhou Ninian was about to say, "I will definitely come and visit you," but before the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them and changed them to, "I was afraid that I would disturb you, so I didn't dare to come and visit you." Chapter 51:15. She had almost promised to visit old Master Fu. Then she would see Li Jinyan from time to time. Fortunately, she had stopped in time. Seeing that the old man's body was still as strong as it was a few years ago, Ninian's smile was like a pool of clear water rippling in her eyes. She asked sincerely with concern, "Old man, are you feeling well?" She winked at Li Jinyan, hinting that she still had something to do and asking him to help old Master Fu home. Good, very good. I was just wondering why you didn't come to visit Grandpa Fu. If you come to visit me, you won't disturb me. I'm just worried that you'll be wasting your time." Old Master Fu wanted to chat with Ninian, but when he thought that his grandson had a long vacation, he became even more excited. He smiled and said unhurriedly, "Is it time to get off work? Do you want to go to Grandpa Fu's house now?" Whether these two young people were fated to be together or not, they needed to have a chance to be together. He did not know if Ninian had a boyfriend. If she did, there was nothing he could do. If she didn't, he had to create an advantageous environment. Old Master Fu, who was smart, had already set a trap for these two young people. Unyielding was still hoping that Li Jinyin would say something, but in the end, she realized that she had been giving signals to blind people. The other party didn't even look at her. Without the sunglasses, Unyielding could only try her best to look normal. "Old Master, I'm really sorry about today. I'm in charge of this area, and now I have to go to the next." Before Zhou Unyielding could finish a sentence, a special police officer strode over and shouted, "Reporting," interrupting Zhou Unyielding. Zhou Unyielding hurriedly said, "Sorry," and immediately turned around. His small face looked particularly serious. It was not a big problem. He just needed to drive a car. Unyielding handed over the car keys, and the special police officer took the keys and walked away. Old Master Fu sighed with a smile. "It's been hard on you. During the conference, you have to work the hardest. Unyielding, you're great, just like my granddaughter." Old Master Fu paused and smiled even more kindly. "My granddaughter is about the same age as you, but she is in the army and graduated from the military school last year." "Not at all. This is our duty." Zhou Unyielding was embarrassed to be praised by the country's minister. Knowing that the old man's granddaughter was an army officer, Zhou Unyielding glanced at the cold Navy officer next to him and smiled. "Does the old man have an Air Force officer at home?" After he finished speaking, he heard the old man laugh loudly. Zhou Unyielding immediately knew that he had made a stupid mistake. The old man himself was in the Air Force. Air Force, Army, and Navy. My family has all of them. We just lack an armed police. The old man, who was laughing heartily, said the last sentence casually. Zhou Unyielding also laughed, and the strange feeling in his heart grew stronger. Why did it sound like there was a deeper meaning behind it? She glanced at Li Jinyin out of the corner of her eye, but there was still no reaction. She was the only one who felt strange. "I'm afraid I'm thinking too much." She squinted her eyes and replied to the old man with a smile. "Your house is fully equipped with land, sea, and air. If another armed policeman comes, there won't be enough space." "Ha ha. As long as you're willing, you can definitely squeeze in." Old Master Fu's words had a double meaning. Zhou Unyielding immediately understood the strange feeling in her heart. So Old Master Fu wanted to bring her and Li Jinyin together. She understood, but it seemed that the cold man beside her still did not understand. Chapter 51:16. This was awkward, so she pretended not to understand. "When the time comes, you'll dislike me for talking too much. It's giving you a headache. You just came back from outside, right? Jinyin and my granddaughter are both outside. I'm too idle at home as an old man. So I found a job at West University to teach students and enrich my life." No wonder his sleeves were stained with white dust. It turned out to be chalk dust. He was already in his 80s, yet he was still teaching at West University. He was really dedicating his life to the country. Unyielding held the old man's left hand and said respectfully, "You must have come back from West University. You must be tired after standing for a whole day. You should go home and rest early. You can teach the students who need you to teach them when you have enough energy." I'm not tired. I feel much younger after chatting with the young people. Let's go and chat while we walk. I'll have Jinyin send you down later." "Unyielding, you won't be unwilling to send an old man like me home, right?" How could she not be willing? She even felt honored. She accompanied the old man to the black car that she saw at noon. Li Jinyin was the one driving, and she chatted with the old man all the way from the entrance to the Fu family's gate. If she didn't need to patrol a few points, she would have followed him into the Fu family's gate. The old man knew that she still had business to attend to, so he didn't force her to stay. He hurriedly asked Li Jinyin to drive Unyielding home. He secretly warned her, You, don't be like a wooden person. Unyielding thinks you have something against her. You have to ask your brother-in-law to teach you a few tricks. I see that you're not moving at all, and my heart is flustered." Later in the car, ask Unyielding more about his personal situation, especially if Unyielding has a boyfriend. "This is the task Grandpa gave you. You must complete it. Do you hear me?" He was already 30 years old, but he didn't even have a partner. Was he really going to be a bachelor for the rest of his life? The old man really couldn't bear to see his grandson, who had been lonely since childhood, be a bachelor for the rest of his life. Unfortunately, the old man's warnings were all in vain. Li Jinyan, who was driving them, really only drove them. He didn't say anything. His expression was grave and cold, and his aura was so cold that Nien Junyan silently shut his mouth. He didn't dare to speak rashly. Occasionally, he would glance at the young officer from the corner of his eye before quickly averting his gaze and pretending to look at the scenery outside. These were all small movements that wouldn't be easily discovered. However, the person she was looking at was Li Jinyan. Every time she glanced at him, he would discover it. Nian Yin had glanced at him 5 times, and Li Jinyan had discovered it 5 times. He kept his cool and didn't ask her why she kept stealing glances at him. Coming out of the Dangui garden, the armed police were on duty in front of them. Li Jinyan, who had been silent all the way, suddenly said faintly, "Which point should we patrol now?" Li Jinyan, who was thinking about how to go to the next patrol station, did not immediately react. She let out an ah in confusion. Li Jinyan frowned slightly. "Where's the next patrol station?" The moment he frowned, Nian Yin panicked and blurted out, "Lu Lin Road." Li Jinyan stepped on the accelerator, and the black car drove past the patrol station. Nian Yin remembered that she was about to get off the car and hurriedly said, we passed the patrol station. I'll send you there." His words were simple and didn't say anything else. Nian Yin felt a headache coming on. She had been distracted and got herself into trouble again. She said softly, "You don't have to send me. I can go there myself." Li Jinyan, who was driving, looked at the girl who was in a hurry to get off the car from the rearview mirror. His frown deepened. "You don't have a car." Did he misunderstand? Chapter 51:17. Li Jinyan directly said that Zhou Ninian didn't have a car, so the person with furrowed brows was Zhou Ninian. Zhou Ninian's gaze quickly swept over this shockingly observant guy. He cleared his throat and calmly said, "I can get a car. Don't waste my time." Li Jinyan furrowed his brows in confusion as he looked at Nian Yin, who had rejected him. He didn't quite understand why she had rejected him. It was clearly the best idea for him to send her there. Nian Yin was defeated by his straightforwardness. She held it in for a while and glared at the man who was so cold that he didn't look like a human being. He won. She held her breath and looked out of the window. She didn't know what to think. She seemed to be in a bad mood. Li Jinyan was also confused. "You peeked at me 5 times just now." Before he could finish, Nian Yin exploded. "When did I peek at you?" She had peeked at him 5 times, right? It couldn't have been more than 3 times. Li Jinyan pursed his lips at her outburst. He pondered for a while, and the car fell into silence. After a while, Li Jinyan said softly, "Were you thinking about how to ask me to send you there? Wasn't that the case?" Nian Yin was frustrated. He didn't know that she would suddenly explode, and he didn't know why she didn't want to take his car. Well, she didn't know why she had rejected him. After thinking for a while, Nian Yin tried his best to raise the corners of his mouth into a friendly smile. "Lieutenant Colonel Li, may I ask how you spent your life in the past? Have you had any interactions or discussions with your female colleagues?" Why did it feel like this lieutenant colonel didn't know what a girl was thinking and didn't know how to talk? Li Jinyan knew that she was angry. He thought for a while and chose a cautious way to answer. "There are no female colleagues in the team. I'm surrounded by male soldiers. Also, I'm sorry for making you angry. It wasn't my intention. Please forgive me if I offended you." Nian Junyan stared at him for a long time. His eyes were so focused that they seemed to be able to see through his soul, but he didn't find anything wrong with him. He was indeed apologizing to her very seriously, and he really didn't know how he had offended her. From this, she could tell that he had never interacted with a girl before. His life was so monotonous that he had to obey orders. Other than the fact that there are no female colleagues in the team, what about your personal life?" Li Jinyan didn't even need to think about it. He immediately replied, "No, not even one." Nian Yin couldn't believe it. "That can't be. You didn't even have a female classmate in middle school, high school, and university?" "Yes, but I don't contact them," Li Jinyan answered honestly. "I'm always in the army, and I rarely contact my family." These words almost made Zhou Ninyan's maternal love overflow. Life was so monotonous that it sounded pitiful. Forget it. Why should she be angry with a soldier who didn't know how to get along and communicate with girls? He didn't even know why he was angry. She leaned back in her seat and pointed to the front, resigned to her fate. Then you can send me back. Thank you. You're welcome. Lee Jinyan drove. After a few meters, he said seriously, I'm not good at getting along with people. My monotonous life has made me lack experience in certain aspects. If I do anything wrong or say something wrong next time, you can correct me directly. I'll be a very good student. Next time? Nien Nien raised her eyebrows. She felt that there shouldn't be a next time. Chapter 51:18. He didn't want to see her smile again. No, I'm not used to getting along with strangers myself. I wasn't really angry just now. Don't take it to heart. Zhou Ninian tried to fool her. Although Li Jinyan didn't know why she was angry, it would be wrong to think that he didn't know anything. His keen intuition clearly told him that Nien Nien was still angry, but not as strong as before. He wanted to ask her what made her angry, but seeing that she was refusing to communicate, Li Jinyan pursed his lips and chose to be silent. The more he said, the more mistakes he would make. It was better for him not to speak for the time being. As for what he said, Li Jinyan held the steering wheel with one hand and rubbed his temples with the other hand. What he said gave him a headache. However, Li Jinyan had always been very obedient to the old man, and the old man's very serious advice made him take it even more seriously. He parked the car at the duty station at Lulin intersection and asked Nien Nien, who was about to get out of the car with a serious face, "Do you have a boyfriend?" Nien Nien, who couldn't wait, ran away even faster. She unlocked the door, opened the door, got out of the car, closed the door, and left quickly. A series of actions were done in one go without any pause. Looking at her back, Li Jinyan pursed his lips and fell into silence. He was now very sure that asking Nien Nien if she had a boyfriend made her angry. What should I do? I can only ask for help. Who should I ask for help? Li Jinyan took out his mobile phone and asked for help from the famous emotional expert in the team, who was also the instructor of the team. Big Shark was writing a report. The landline phone rang, but he didn't look at the number. He picked it up and heard the devil, who only took a long vacation once in a few years, asked a question very seriously. After hanging up the phone, Big Shark did not even bother to write a report. He ran all the way to the training ground by the beach. 10 minutes after hanging up the phone, all the members of the Storm Commandos knew that their captain, the Eternal Bachelor, had descended from the heavens and had fallen in love with them. Such explosive news didn't wait for Li Jinyan to receive Nien Nien's next duty station. Even Commander Dong of the Navy knew about it. Quick, investigate the background of the girl he likes first. Why is this brat chasing girls without saying a word? Why didn't you tell the team in advance? Following the advice of the instructor, Big Shark, who was also a part-time relationship expert, Li Jinyan parked the car by the side. His gaze followed Nien Junyan's figure, waiting for her to finish her patrol before sending her to the next execution point. She hadn't eaten dinner yet. If there was a restaurant on the way, he could take her for dinner, even if it was a fast food restaurant. Li Jinyan was waiting for the anniversary to be over. The armed police on duty had already noticed that their captain was coming over, so they parked their car by the side. After reporting their work, one of the police officers smiled and said, "No wonder the captain didn't drive over personally today. It turns out that there's someone to pick him up. Captain, can you introduce someone to us? Let's see who can invite our captain to ride in his car." Nien Nien also knew that Li Jinyan's car had been parked by the roadside. When she heard her teammates teasing her, she pulled a long face and said, "It's forbidden to discuss personal matters while on duty. After returning to the team, we'll do a 3-kilometer long run." Yes. The SWAT policeman who was punished looked straight and accepted the punishment without any resistance. Chapter 51:19. Although their captain was a woman, it was said that she had trained in an extremely perverted training camp abroad for a whole year. She was even more ruthless than the boys. She was a new officer, and she had directly burned the male special police officers until they were convinced. After patrolling the first duty station, Nian looked at the cars that were still parked on the side of the road. He didn't plan to hitch a ride there, so he directly took the mobile car key that was on duty at Lulin Road and drove there himself. She was scared to sit in his car. At this time, the sky was getting dark, and the street lamps on the side of the road lit up at dusk. The pale and yellow street lamps were so hazy that it seemed like the figure that they had been paying attention to would disappear in the blink of an eye. Li Jinyan pushed the door open and got out of the car. Nian, who heard the noise, suddenly grabbed the car key and ran, successfully escaping. Li Jinyan, who got out of the car but didn't catch up, stood at the intersection and watched as Nian, who had been waiting for about 15 minutes, drove past in front of him and waved at him, saying goodbye. The 4 special police officers on duty at the intersection saw the whole thing and expressed their sympathy for this man, who was obviously a soldier. It seemed that he was not their captain's boyfriend, but a suitor. It would be a bit difficult to catch up with their captain. There was a police officer who was also a member of the special police team that their captain used to be in. After chasing her for 2 months, the captain rolled up his sleeves and beat him up. After that, he lost to the captain. The captain said on the spot that she would not find a man who couldn't even beat her to be her boyfriend. The police officer, who was humiliated, never came again. They didn't know if this man in front of them, who was chasing her, could beat their captain. They would wait and see. None of the special police officers who were paying attention to Li Jinyan came over to say anything. When they saw their captain drive past Li Jinyan and even wave at him, the 4 special police officers suddenly felt that Li Jinyan's back was very pitiful and lonely. Li Jinyan, who watched the car leave, held the phone that had been in his hand all this time. He needed to consult the instructor again to help him analyze the situation in front of him and how to deal with it. The Great Mermaid was already extremely sympathetic to their captain. However, as an instructor and a comrade, she could not discourage her comrade at this moment. She had to encourage and support him. Zhou Ninian, who was driving away, secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Li Jinyan did not chase after him. He then saw him standing under the street lamp, watching him leave. The dim light shrouded his figure, and people kept coming and going around him. He was the only one standing there quietly, as if he did not fit in with the surroundings. At that moment, Zhou Ninian inexplicably felt that the tall and slender figure was particularly lonely. Her heart also softened. Forget it. I'll chat with him the next time we meet. Who knows? The next time we meet might be a few years later. She was prepared for the next meeting to be a few years later. Unexpectedly, she saw Li Jinyan almost every day in the next few days. At the same time, she also saw the old master. The number of times she went in and out of Dangaway Garden in a week was more than the number of times she went abroad to the last 2 days. In just 2 days, Zhou Ninian learned about Li Jinyan's childhood from the old master. He lost his mother at a young age, was ostracized by his family, his biological father was not close to him, his stepmother was indifferent, his grandfather did not love him, and it was not his biological grandmother's grandmother who schemed against him. When Zhou Ninian heard that, she felt that Li Jinyan was even more pitiful. It turned out that when she drove away that day, she saw Li Jinyan standing under the street lamp. It was not because the street lamp was too dark, but he was really quite pitiful. Chapter 51:20. She was born into a family where her parents were very loving and her elder brother doted on her. Although she knew that some families were not harmonious and caused children to be unhappy, she really did not know that there was such a cold family like Li Jinyan's. He has suffered since he was young. Now, whenever I think of the hardships he went through when he was young, I can't sleep at night. Ninian, you may think that he is cold now, but it is just a facade. He yearns for care and warmth more than anyone else. Grandpa Fu is old, and I don't know how many more years he can stay with him. I just hope that before he passes away, there will be someone by his side who cares about him, so that he can have a warm family for the rest of his life. I still remember that he wrote an essay in elementary school, saying that his greatest wish was to have a warm family. Sai, with his cold personality now, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that he won't be able to have a warm family. Old Master Fu had never said these words in front of Yi Qian and Li Jinyan. These words were like needles stabbing into their hearts. Old Master Fu would not say these words, as it would only make the siblings sad. Nyenyen's eyes turned red when he heard these words. Li Jinyan did not know any of these. Li Ronghuan would call him at 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day, and Li Jinyan would leave the Fu family home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day. He was not around for 2 consecutive days, and old Master Fu decided to tie him up at home on the 3rd day, so that he could not go out again, even if he had to. He had to make the best use of his short break to settle his personal affairs. On the 3rd day, at 7 o'clock in the evening on the 2nd day of Jinyan's consecutive visits to Dangui Garden, Li Jinyan, who was with Li Ronghuan, received orders to immediately return to the team. He greeted Li Ronghuan, who was in the middle of a discussion, and Li Ronghuan, who couldn't get up to send him off, only had time to remind him to be careful. Li Jinyan then hurriedly left and returned to Dangui Garden. Li Jinyan, who only had 9 days of leave, arrived at Dangui Garden at 8 o'clock in the evening. He parked his car and walked up the stone steps leading to the main gate. The tightly shut door opened with a click. Nyenyenyan, who had left, looked at Li Jinyan, who had just returned. Li Jinyan looked at Nyenyenyan, who had just left. Both of them were stunned for a moment. Then, Li Jinyan nodded slightly and stepped up the stone steps to let Nyenyenyan pass. Old Master Fu, who had insisted on sending Nyenyenyan off, smiled when he saw Li Jinyan returning at such a coincidental time. "You're back at the right time. Nyenyen came to our house to play and is about to go down now. Jinyan, quickly send Nyenyen home." Jinyan, Nyenyen, the names were right. Li Jinyan, who needed to return to the team immediately, glanced at Nyenyen. The girl, who was illuminated by the light under the beam, was dressed in a SWAT uniform. She stood tall and straight, looking valiant and formidable. When he looked over, she immediately looked away. She didn't reject the old man's suggestion. Li Jinyan could only apologize. "I just received an emergency order from the army and need to return immediately. I can only send you out of Dangui Garden. If there's a chance next time, I'll definitely send you home." He left Dangui Garden at 8 o'clock in the evening and took the early morning flight back to the army. This was the first time Nyenyenyan had watched Li Jinyan leave. Li Jinyan's identity was special, and he could only take the plane because of an emergency order. Even if the rest of the soldiers received the order to return to the army, they could only take the train back to the army. Ships from Western countries had entered China's waters, and fishermen had pulled out a strange object that looked a little like a torpedo. When they saw the English words on it, the fishermen knew that something was wrong and returned to the port overnight. They immediately handed it over to the Coast Guard. Chapter 51:21. The fishermen who went out to sea didn't know about these things in the past, and they weren't that vigilant either. It was the sea staff who often visited the fishermen to slowly ease their vigilance. Therefore, every time they caught something strange in the sea, they would immediately turn it in instead of secretly bringing it home. If it was in the past, they would first move the strange things back to the village or home. Sometimes, they wouldn't even take it to heart. If they thought it was in the way, they would throw it back into the sea. The sea police immediately recognized the strange things turned in by the fishing nets as underwater unmanned detectors. That day, the sea police and navy in the southern waters were mobilized to search for how many more underwater unmanned detectors there were in our waters. These things weren't to steal our territorial waters, but to prepare in advance for future battles. Not only were the detectors found in the southern waters, but they were also found in the Bohai Sea, the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, and other waters. Li Jinyan didn't return to the team because of the underwater unmanned detectors. He returned to the team for a secret military operation. They needed to catch up with a ship that wasn't from our country and had other plans under the banner of ocean pollution control. Only the members in charge of the operation knew what the water ghosts of the Storm Commandos would do after they caught up with the ship. Nyenyen watched Li Jinyan leave and stood in the darkness for a long time before leaving. The man who walked out of that kind of family environment looked cold-hearted, so cold that people didn't dare to get close to him. However, she unexpectedly saw another side of him. He was calm, courageous, self-controlled, and calm. He was so strong that it was as if all difficulties were nothing to him. This kind of man, no matter how cold he looked and how people didn't dare to approach him, once people knew about the other side of him, they would rush over like moths to a flame just to get his momentary attention. After walking for a long time, Nian suddenly turned around and looked in the direction Li Jinyan left. The wide street was filled with cars, red tail lights, and bright headlights intertwined to create a prosperous scene. The back view that left in a hurry was one of the guardians of this prosperous scene. He used his unbending back to shoulder the responsibility given to him by the military uniform. He stood tall and upright, a true man. Li Jinyan, who left in a car, didn't know that the girl who left in a hurry was standing on the street and staring in the direction he left, praying in her heart that he would return safely. Li Jinyan, who left in a hurry, arrived at a military base of China's Navy at 4 o'clock in the morning the next day. Without any rest, he changed into casual clothes and left the port with his 7 team members on a cargo ship. It would take about 15 to 20 days for them to return. Yi Qian's airborne unit had not been peaceful for the past few days either. During the day, the fighter jets would take off from the airfield and only return at night. At the same time, the pilots had increased their night flight training, while the airborne troops had also increased their night flight training by taking transport planes into the sky. Yi Qian and the other 15 female paratroopers were not on the list for the night airborne training. They were still completing the intensive training during the day and would only enter the night airborne training after they passed the intensive training. The real ones who had received night airborne training were the squad leader and deputy squad leader. Before the two of them joined the special forces, they were the squad leaders of the airborne troops. Their overall strength was quite strong, and they had completed many night airborne missions. The female soldiers who had finished their training looked at the male soldiers who were ready to go. Their eyes were filled with envy. They also wanted to do night airborne training, but they didn't know when they would be able to do so. Chapter 51:22. When the male soldiers increased their night training, the female soldiers didn't feel the hardship and instead felt envious. Class leader, can we apply for night airborne training earlier? Seeing the male soldiers take off every day, even I want to join the male soldier class. Yeah, class leader, we've been here for almost 2 months, and we haven't even had a night training session. The atmosphere has been so tense these past few days, I think we should speed up the training process. Our comrades were originally paratroopers, and we're not like Yi Qian. We have a solid foundation and can definitely undergo a night training session. You guys only think that we have a solid foundation and that we still have to consider Yi Jian. She's still completing the daytime training and hasn't even passed the daytime training. Immediately let her undergo night training. Be careful not to lose her life. When Yi Qian was mentioned, the 10 or so female soldiers fell silent. The class leader looked at the female soldiers and saw that they didn't look good. She sighed. Yi Qian is already working very hard. We need to give her some time. She has 0 foundation. But haven't you guys noticed that she's improving very quickly? She passed all 8 hours of parachute training today, checking the parachute gear, folding the parachute jacket, arranging the rope, controlling the belt, putting the parachute jacket into the parachute jacket. Her speed today is even faster than a few of you paratroopers. Do you think the speed of improvement is slow or fast? Although the class leader didn't treat Yi Qian very well, she couldn't casually deny a soldier's improvement. Yi Qian was a paratrooper, but she had seen her improvement. Although she was still a distance away from the overall standard, she was very satisfied with her speed of improvement. With her current speed of improvement, she would be able to catch up to the overall standard in half a year. Of course, she still couldn't be compared to real paratroopers. The class leader's words made most of the female soldiers nod their heads. It was undeniable that Yi Qian, who came from the army, had improved a lot in the past 2 months, but she still couldn't catch up to the overall standard of the entire class. She couldn't even catch up to the physical training. They didn't even know if her previous unit had arranged any training for her. Could it be that because she was a female soldier, The original soldiers took special care of her, so much so that they even turned a blind eye to her training. Yi Qian has improved, but she's still dragging our class down. I still have a problem with her. I don't approve of her staying in our class. One of the female soldiers said coldly. The 15 female soldiers were divided into two groups, one with 7 people and the other with 8 people. Yi Qian belonged to the group of 8, and the female soldiers who had different opinions were in the same group as Yi Qian. Another female soldier in the same group also said with a sullen face, "We passed the parachute training today, but what about the physical training? We were called away by Captain Lei before the training was completed. We didn't come back until we finished the physical training. It's been like this every day for more than half a month. I even suspect that Yi Qian and Captain Lei have some special relationship." Shut up. She even mentioned a special relationship. The class leader, who had a good temper, said with a sullen face, "What nonsense are you talking about? Do you need me to teach you that trouble comes from a mouth?" Realizing that it was likely that more than one female soldier thought this way, the class leader immediately whistled. All the female soldiers quickly gathered and accepted the class leader's criticism. "You can have opinions about Yi Qian, but I don't want to hear you talk about personal relationships. Captain Lei is our captain. Who gave you the guts to bring up Captain Lei's name?" Lu Hui stepped forward. Chapter 51-23. Lu Hui, who came from the 17th Air Force Division, was the female soldier who had the biggest opinion of Yi Qian. There was no other reason other than that she had always thought that the reason why her comrades from the 17th Air Force Division were eliminated was because Yi Qian, as an Army soldier, had snatched their spot. She always thought so. Even if the class leader explained it later, it didn't eliminate her opinion in her heart. It couldn't be helped. Yi Qian was from the Army. For an Army member to join the very difficult Air Force Special Reconnaissance, let alone Lu Hui, all the female soldiers, including the class leader, thought so. Otherwise, why would the class leader say that she allowed the female soldiers to have opinions about Yi Qian? However, opinions could be held, but personal relationships could not be used to talk about things, and without any evidence. Rumors often started casually, and in the end, it became more and more exaggerated, and in the end, it spread to the point of no return. It would implicate oneself and others. Especially in the Army, once it got out of hand, a large number of people would be punished. Lu Hui, the female soldier who said that she suspected Yi Qian and Captain Lei had a special relationship, walked out after being called out. Her face didn't look too good. "Lu Hui, now tell me, does everyone in your group think so? Or did all of you secretly discuss this behind my and the vice class leader's back?" Lu Hui didn't speak, but the class leader's face was already angry. "I'll count to 3. If you don't speak up, the whole class will run 10 kilometers with weights." Lu Hui didn't answer, and the comrades in the group didn't speak either. Guo Chui, who was previously helped by Yi Qian, wanted to stand out and report, but she was whispered to by her comrades on both sides. "If we're going to be punished, we'll be punished together. Don't add to the chaos." Everyone said, "Don't help others." Guo Chui moved her lips and finally chose to remain silent. They weren't wrong. The comrades in the group said that if we're going to be punished, we'll be punished together. Yi Qian helped her before, and she remembered in her heart, but she didn't believe that Yi Qian joined based on his strength like them. None of the female soldiers stood out, and the class leader's face was already dark. Good. All of you are very loyal, right? Armed 20 kilometers cross-country with weights. Now, return to the dormitory immediately. Gather downstairs in 5 minutes. There was a certain difference between 20 kilometers of loaded cross-country and 20 kilometers of loaded running. They had to bring along all the individual combat weapons. The airborne soldiers' equipment included heavy parachute bags. The parachute bags that the female soldiers were currently training with weighed 5 kilograms. In addition to the paratroopers' individual combat equipment, such as automatic rifles, ammunition clips, water bottles that weighed 2 kilograms, satchels, and ammunition pouches. The total weight was 15 kilograms. If the word armed didn't exist, then the heavy umbrella could be dispensed with. The faces of the 13 female soldiers, including the vice squad leader, had already turned green after 20 kilometers of cross-country running with 15 kilograms of weight. The squad leader was also punished. This was her dereliction of duty. Because of her indulgence, the female soldiers dared to talk about personal relationships in private. They were so bold that they even involved Captain Lei. If they didn't stop it, it would lead to a huge mistake. If you think that Yi Qian is incapable, fine. If you think that Yi Qian has implicated the class, fine. If you think that Yi Qian is not suitable to stay, then fine. These opinions could only be directed at Yi Qian, but they could not spread and affect other people. Chapter 51-24. 5 minutes later, all the female soldiers ran back to their dorms to pack up. Yi Qian didn't come back again. She's clearly the worst. She even ran away from a 20 kilometers armed off-road vehicle. Why didn't the class leader find her? The female soldiers who ran back to their dorms to pack their luggage quickly muttered, "She didn't come back even after we punished her a few times. Is she doing it on purpose? All right, let's not talk too much. Let her run away. When the time comes, everyone will know that she's not good enough, and she won't be far from the team." She said she would leave the team every day, but it's been almost 2 months, and she still hasn't left. The class leader doesn't dare to report the problem to Captain Lei. Do you expect us to do it? We already said that it has to be useful. Save it. It's useless. Unless she leaves on her own accord. It's a pity that she's so thick-skinned. She clearly knows that we don't like her, but she never thought of leaving. Guo Chui, who was packing her bag, heard this. Her expression changed again and again. She tied up her bag and looked coldly at the female soldiers who were still talking nonstop. Are you guys done talking? Does it feel good to criticize others behind their backs? No matter how bad Yi Qian's personal ability is, at least she has never criticized you guys behind your backs. Can't you guys stop for a while? All you do is say that Yi Qian isn't good enough here and there. Do you guys really think you're good enough? Are all of you so great? She suddenly opened her mouth to defend Yi Qian. The female soldiers in the dorm suddenly looked embarrassed. Guo Chui's performance in class was quite good. She usually took care of them. Now that she stood up to defend Yi Qian, it was hard for them to refute her. Lu Hui, who was also very strong, dared to do so. When she heard this, she laughed coldly. What? Just because she helped you once, you remember her kindness? Why don't you remember when she implicated us? Don't forget, when you two were playing together, you implicated us every day. Didn't you have a big opinion of her at that time? You even asked the class leader to change her assistant. Folding umbrellas required the cooperation of both the main and the assistant. After folding one person's main umbrella and assistant umbrella, the other person's umbrella bag would be folded. When Yi Qian had just arrived, he had partnered with Guo Chui for the first half of the month. Because of this, he had said a lot of unpleasant things. Guo Chui snorted. That's because she just came over and didn't know anything. Had she ever lost before? In less than 2 months of training, why didn't you see her hard work? Do you still want to continue arguing? Do you want to do another 20 kilometers of armed off-road? The vice squad leader, who had applied to leave the barracks and return to the dormitory late, heard that the female soldiers were quarreling again because of Yi Qian. With a cold face, he reprimanded them. Quarreling every day. Do you think the barracks is a market where you can quarrel and cause trouble whenever you want? Look at you guys now. Do you look like soldiers? If you make any more noise, I'll double the price. The 20 kilometers of armed off-road could only be completed after leaving the barracks. Any soldier who wanted to leave the barracks had to apply in advance. Even if it was for training, the entire squad needed to apply in advance. After 5 minutes, the 14 female soldiers had finished gathering. Yi Qian, who didn't know about this, still hadn't appeared in the formation. The squad leader, who was 1 person short after reporting, didn't send anyone to look for Yi Qian. With a sullen face, he led the 13 female soldiers to complete the 20 kilometers of armed off-road. Within the 5 minutes of gathering, the vice squad leader applied to leave the barracks for training. In front of Yi Qian, Captain Lei agreed to the sudden 20 kilometers of armed off-road. Chapter 5125. Yi Qian was practicing 3 steps on the simulated aircraft platform. Captain Lei looked up at Yi Qian, whose movements were already quite standard. He did not intend to tell Yi Qian that the female soldier class had already left the training. 20 kilometers of armed cross-country was not a problem for Yi Qian at all. As a special soldier from the army, armed cross-country was common. At present, Yi Qian needed to strengthen the parachute training the most. There was still a week before the female soldier class also needed to do night airborne training. Yi Qian, who became a soldier midway, needed to complete it in advance so that he could keep up with the female soldiers' night airborne training a week later. Captain Lei was still quite confident about whether Yi Qian could complete the night airborne training with the female soldiers a week later. Putting away the communication device, Captain Lei took Yi Qian's 15-day training record book from the male soldier Xiao Tu. He read it from the first page and carefully looked at each item one by one. From this, he could see the extent of Yi Qian's efforts and progress. Xiao Tu was now convinced by Yi Qian. Her speed of progress is like a fast food bar. She makes a lot of progress every day. Obviously, she has only been training for less than 2 months, but now she looks like a veteran. I'm trembling with fear watching from the side. If I hadn't watched her training for half a month, I would have suspected that she was actually a paratrooper. Amazing, really amazing. 15 female soldiers, and she is the first. There was a rustling sound of pages turning. Captain Lei, who began to read the second page, smiled and said, "You're just trembling with fear. Aren't you afraid at all?" From the record book, her progress was indeed as fast as Xiao Tu had said. He could see that she was changing day by day, improving day by day. She was very hardworking and very talented, especially in the formation of muscle memory. She was always faster than others. Because of this, her progress was particularly fast. Not to mention Xiao Tu trembling with fear, Captain Lei looked at her record day by day and felt his hair stand on end. Xiao Tu, who was looking up at Yi Qian's training, quickly glanced at Captain Lei, who was looking down at the record book, and asked with a smile, "Afraid? What are you scared of? She's improving so quickly. Aren't you afraid that she'll surpass you one day?" Captain Lei was not joking. He asked very seriously, "Don't you feel afraid to be surpassed by a female army soldier with 0 foundation?" Little Head, who had never thought of this before, was stunned. He stared at the female soldier training on the platform, and his mind quickly recalled the half a month he had led the team to train. Was he scared? He was a little scared now. It's not scary to be surpassed by her. What's scary is that we didn't realize that she would surpass us one day, Captain Lei said in a low voice, his frown showing a cold expression. She can work so hard and complete 2 training sessions in a day. It seems that we have to increase the volume of our training. Every day, after Yi Qian completed the training for the female soldiers, she would be immediately brought to the male soldiers' training base to complete another training. Through the training on both sides, the distance between Yi Qian and the female soldiers would be shortened. In less than 2 months, Yi Qian, who had 0 foundation, completed all the parachute training and reached a qualified level. Now, it was all intensive training, and it was harder than before. But they had never heard Yi Qian say it was hard. Every day, she was able to persevere and complete the tasks given to her. Was he scared? Scared. Captain Lei himself was scared. Chapter 5126. Looking at the female soldier on the simulated aircraft platform, he saw her shrink her head, bend her waist, suck in her chest, suck in her stomach, bend her knees, and follow the standard landing movement from the platform to landing smoothly. The corners of Captain Lei's mouth tightened slightly, and his bright eyes had a more determined look. Division Commander Kong intended to let Yi Qian train the 14 female soldiers. Now, it seemed that the male soldiers were being trained before the female soldiers were trained by Yi Qian. No wonder Division Commander Kong wanted Yi Qian, an army soldier, to be temporarily transferred to the airborne troops. He now understood Division Commander Kong's painstaking efforts. When the male soldiers below saw Yi Qian landing, they gave Yi Qian a big thumbs up and laughed loudly. "Beautifully done, very good. Thank you." Yi Qian replied loudly, his voice full of confidence. Captain Lei didn't look at the record book anymore. He didn't need to. He could see her improvement from the way she jumped. Her movements were so standard that they didn't look like a female soldier who had just joined the airborne troops less than 2 months ago. Jump off the 5-meter simulator 50 times. Quick, quick, quick. Yes, sir. After jumping off, Yi Qian didn't have a minute to rest. She immediately ran to the 5-meter simulator to start the next intensive training. These were all ground movement training for parachuting. During the day, she had to jump off the 5-meter platform and the 5-meter simulator in the female soldiers class. She had to continuously practice landing and leaving the plane. She had to do this at least 200 times during the day. When the female soldiers were resting, Yi Qian had to run to the male soldiers for intensive training. At least 50 times. Yi Qian's legs were swollen every day after such high-intensity training. Every paratrooper had to go through this before they could surpass themselves and defeat themselves again and again. Yi Qian, who had already jumped from a plane, threw herself into the airborne training with 120% of her fighting spirit. She wanted to make herself grow more solid through her sweat. Let's start the aerial maneuvering training. Yi Qian, get ready. Yes, sir. Yi Qian, who had just completed an hour of intensive off-the-plane training, did not even wipe the sweat off his face before he threw himself into the next set of training, air operations training. During the entire aerial maneuvering training, the body was suspended in the air. The instructor would issue instructions to simulate various situations in the air, and Yi Qian would handle them accordingly. The instructors were all male soldiers in Captain Lei's team, and all of them were elites in the airborne forces. Yi Qian almost didn't dare to raise his head during his first training. Umbrella, big left, small right, deal with it. Discovered entangled umbrella rope. Deal with it. Found that the focus is on the left. Deal with it. Yi Qian was constantly giving out orders, and Yi Qian was constantly completing them. The reaction time of his brain and the speed of his hands had to be synchronized. If he was even a little slower, the result would be being scolded. Luckily, Yi Qian was not scolded anymore. He had been scolded for 3 days straight. That was enough. Landing impact, force adaptation training. Yes, landing impact, force adaptation training consisted of 3 types of concrete platforms of different heights. They would start from the lowest to the highest without any discomfort when jumping off. Yi Qian already had no discomfort, but she still continued. She had to strengthen the training every day to be prepared for the next jump. From 5 to 7, Yi Qian completed 2 hours of intensive training. She only had 5 minutes to eat before she had to return to the female soldier class to complete the night ground training. The reason why the Special Forces scouts and the airborne troops were so strong was because of their sweat and blood. Chapter 51-27. By the end of the training, Yi Qian was so tired that she wanted to crawl. She spent almost every year in high-intensity training. Even when she was in school, she would consciously increase the intensity of her training. However, compared to the training she was going through now, Yi Qian felt that the training she had gone through in the past was not that tiring. After more than half a month of continuous training, Yi Qian, who had always been able to endure hardships, felt tired. However, paratroopers were highly dangerous soldiers. If they did not train well, they would die on the battlefield. Infantrymen could attack the enemy's territory in groups, but paratroopers had to descend from the enemy's sky into the enemy's territory in small groups. A troop class that was born to be surrounded. After a few daytime paratroopers training, Yi Qian had already experienced the danger of it. How is it? Can you still walk? The male soldier in charge of training asked Yi Qian, who was panting heavily. If you can't walk, you can sit for a while, but you might not have dinner. Yi Qian moved her sore legs and smiled. Even if I have to crawl, I have to crawl to eat. Otherwise, I won't have the strength to train at night. You're a real man. Let's go eat together. The male soldier, who had also not eaten, did not help Yi Qian walk. He was not a new recruit who needed to be cared for, so he was not that delicate. Yi Jian naturally did not need the male soldiers who were in charge of guiding her training to support her. She had finished the training of the female soldiers during the day, and the male soldiers had also finished their training during the day before coming back to train her. It was the same for everyone. There was no reason for them to be able to persevere while she still needed support. There was no distinction between gender on a battlefield. You only had one identity, a soldier. As night fell, Yi Qian, who had finished her training, followed the male soldiers to the cafeteria. There were 3 male soldiers in charge of Yi Qian's training, and they were all elites. You still need to practice landing more. Your legs are still not very stable. Once the chassis is unstable, you can easily get injured. You have to be careful. I suggest that you tie sandbags to your legs for a 5 kilometers run tomorrow morning to increase your stability. When I jumped down, I felt like there was something in front of me pulling me forward. It should be because I didn't have a good grasp of my center of gravity when I landed. Yes, you must control your center of gravity well. You must not deviate. Also, your weight. The male soldier who had pointed out Yi Qian's problem with landing paused for a moment and sized up Yi Qian. Then, he laughed and said, "You're too skinny. You look so light." Yi Qian, who was 168 meters tall, was considered to be on the skinny side. When the male soldiers brought her for training for the first time, their first reaction was that she might be blown away by the wind along with her umbrella. Fortunately, through the training, his skills had passed, and such a situation did not occur. As the 3 male soldiers walked, they told Yi Qian about the details of today's training that he needed to pay attention to. They pointed them out very seriously, and Yi Qian listened even more attentively, memorizing them one by one. 3 elites were assigned to guide Yi Qian. With such high standards, it was only natural that they had high standards and high requirements. They had high standards and high requirements for themselves, and it was the same for Yi Qian. Captain Lei, who had been standing not too far away, looked at the female soldiers walking over with the male soldiers. When they got closer, Captain Lei smiled and clapped his hands. Yi Qian, who was still sweating profusely, walked over when he heard the sound. He immediately recognized the figure standing in the dark and clapping his hands. Xiao Tu whispered to Yi Qian, "Our captain was watching you when you first entered the landing plane. He has been watching for more than an hour now." Chapter 51:28. Since the training was over, there was no need to be so restrained in their conversation. "You've been standing for so long? Don't tell me you haven't eaten." Yi Qian quickly looked at Captain Lei in front of her. She couldn't help but quicken her pace. "Then let's walk a little faster. We've been waiting for more than an hour. I'm afraid you have something to say to me." Afraid of being criticized by the captain? Little Head, who was following closely, suppressed his laughter and teased. "Our captain's scolding is definitely a classic. He'll scold you until you feel like you were born in the wrong body." The 2 male soldiers at the back laughed in a muffled voice, making Yi Qian's scalp tingle. "It's not that scary, right? Why don't you cover for me, and I'll escape first? Do you think it's possible?" "Impossible," Yi Qian answered with a serious face. "Please get ready." Little Head replied, even more seriously. "Don't listen to his nonsense. The captain won't scold you, only us." The 2 male soldiers at the back couldn't bear to watch anymore. This bastard. What kind of man was he to scare the female soldiers? Yi Qian, who was in a relaxed mood, pursed his lips and smiled. "I'll tell the captain what Little Head said just now. If we really want to be scolded, I think Little Head should be the one to take the lead." "I was wrong, Yi Qian." "You weren't wrong. It's all for my own good." "I was really wrong." Little Head begged for mercy. Was he out of his mind just now? He actually wanted to scare Yi Qian. Captain Lei looked at the 4 figures walking over in a harmonious atmosphere, and the smile on his lips deepened. She had never been affected by the female soldier's rejection. She had always maintained a positive attitude and constantly improved. If she continued to develop like this, he He suspected that she would surpass the female soldiers in less than half a year. "Captain! Captain!" The four figures called out at the same time. Captain Lei nodded slightly, and his gaze fell on Yi Qian. There was already praise in his eyes. "I've been watching your training just now. Not bad, Yi Qian. I can't see any traces of the army on you. You're now a member of our airborne unit." Seeing that her eyes were still glowing, Captain Lei couldn't help but exclaim, "Yi Qian, you're really outstanding. You've really shocked me." It was the only way to express Captain Lei's mood at this time. Yi Jian, who had trained until her cheeks were red, had no dry spots on her body. She looked like she had just been pulled out of the water. She smiled and shook her head. "I'm still far from Division Commander Kong's requirements. I have to continue working hard." He was still not satisfied with the speed of his improvement. Captain Lei could not help but laugh. "Yi Qian, oh Yi Qian, you're amazing, but you're still not satisfied with yourself." Afraid that Yi Qian would put too much pressure on himself, Captain Lei stopped smiling and gently advised, "It's good to be strict with yourself, but you don't have to keep yourself in a tense state all the time. You need to relax occasionally. There's still 4 months left. I believe you will surpass them. By then, the female soldiers will know how wrong they were." Captain Lei already knew what Division Commander Kong had talked to Yi Qian in private. In order to allow the female soldiers to adapt to the high-intensity training in the future, Division Commander Kong actually asked Yi Qian to hide his strength first, and then suppress the female soldiers. This was a bit of a bad division commander. As for the female soldiers, alas, Yi Qian hit it too well. They actually didn't realize it until now. Every day, they still thought Yi Qian was dragging them down. Every day, they had different opinions. All of them wanted to kick Yi Qian out as soon as possible. After half a year, Captain Lei's dark face showed a meaningful smile. He was now looking forward to what would happen in half a year. The 3 male soldiers also reported to Captain Lei about Yi Qian's training today. Chapter 51-29. Captain Lei, who also missed dinner, gestured Xiao Tu and the other 3 male soldiers to talk as they walked. Yi Qian saw this and was worried that she would not be able to make it in time for the gathering of the female soldiers, so she proposed to leave first. Captain Lei waved his hand and smiled. "Don't worry. Let's eat first. After dinner, we'll arrange for tonight's training." Yi Qian glanced at Captain Lei and smiled as she raised her eyebrows. "If I don't go over, I'll be criticized again." "Captain Lei, entering the airborne force is the most I've ever been criticized in my military service." This sentence made Captain Lei, Xiao Tu, and the other 2 male soldiers laugh. They more or less knew that the female soldiers ostracized the female soldiers, and among them, Captain Lei knew it best. Because of Division Commander Kong's instructions, she was indeed wronged here. Then scold them again. After leaving the airborne force, you won't be able to find them even if you want to. They have a 20-kilometer armed cross-country trip tonight. It was a last-minute decision, and they probably won't be back until midnight. You don't have to. Captain Lei smiled and asked Yi Qian, who frowned slightly, "Do you feel wronged? Do you have the urge to scold them back?" Did they think she was an impulsive recruit? She did not go for the 20-kilometer armed cross-country trip this time. When they came back, she would have to listen to another wave of criticism. Yi Qian laughed. "I don't feel wronged, only aggrieved. I really don't have the urge to scold them back. I've already been criticized. If I still talk back, they will really find something to use against me to send me away." No matter how the female soldiers held opinions about Yi Qian did not talk back. She humbly accepted criticism and punishment. In this way, she gave the female soldiers an honest impression. An honest person with a beautiful face. As for Yi Qian's concealment, Xiao Tu and the other 2 who were in charge of her training also knew. Hearing this, Xiao Tu was the first to comfort Yi Qian. "You can't rise above others without suffering. After 6 months, it's your turn to beat them up. You can hold your head high and be in high spirits. Who else can do it but me?" You used the idiom well. You said everything I wanted to say. The male soldier in charge of Yi Qian's landing training rolled his eyes at his comrade, then smiled and comforted Yi Qian. They have eyes but failed to recognize the pearl. In the future, when you get back at them, they won't dare to say anything. Another male soldier, surnamed Guan, agreed with his comrade. That's right, that's right. We don't have to look at what's in front of us. Think about it. You have to stay in the airborne unit for 2 years. You only have to suffer for half a year now, but they will have to suffer for 1.5 years. The alternative consolation made Yi Qian smile uncontrollably. Thank you for your consolation, instructors. For now, even though they have opinions about me, they don't have any ill intentions. They're purely looking at me from the perspective of a paratrooper. They simply think that I'm suitable to return to the Army since I joined the Army halfway. When I did something wrong during training, they would immediately correct me instead of pretending that they didn't notice. In fact, I'm very grateful for their correction. So, even though I feel a little aggrieved, it's still within the limits of tolerance. Half a year. Yi Qian herself also hoped that half a year would be up soon. The most important thing was that she had to surpass the female soldiers within half a year. Otherwise, Division Commander Kong's intention of transferring her over would be in vain. Captain Lei let his comrades comfort Yi Qian while he carefully observed the changes in Yi Qian's expression. Seeing that she really didn't take the female soldier's rejection to heart, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Chapter 51:30. Every now and then, Division Commander Kong would call him to ask about Yi Jian's situation. He also asked him to keep track of Yi Jian's personal movements at all times, especially her emotions. Once there was a problem, he had to deal with it properly. He didn't care if the problem was kept overnight. He also warned him that if anything happened to Yi Jian and his team, he would be held accountable. Captain Lei was under a lot of psychological pressure. Fortunately, Yi Qian was very capable. Her life, training, interpersonal relationships, all aspects did not make him worry, and she performed well in all aspects, which made him particularly worry-free. Every time he reported to the division commander or received a call from the division commander, the whole process was easy. Every time Captain Lei saw Yi Jian, he would feel sorry that he didn't really belong to the airborne force. Yi Jian was such an excellent soldier. Every time they talked, Captain Lei could not help but persuade Yi Qian to stay, seducing her at every opportunity, such as now. If you don't want to be sullen, it's simple. Just change to a soldier and become a member of our airborne force, then show your true ability. They can only admire you, and from then on, they won't dare to say anything bad about you. Xiao Tu and the other 2 male soldiers were definitely on the same side as Captain Lei. Hearing this, they all tried to persuade her. Yes. Anyway, you have been in the Army for so long. Isn't it good to change to a different force? I think as long as you say the word, Division Commander Kong promises to get it done for you. The Air Force is so good you can fight in the sky, but the Army can only fight on the ground, a bit boring. If you stay, the 14 female soldiers will definitely be under your control. When the time comes, if you point east, they won't dare to go west. They all tried to persuade Yi Qian to stay. With her current speed of progress, she was definitely a top soldier. Talent was a hot steam bun wherever she went. The gentle night breeze blew, blowing away the sweat on Yi Qian's body, but also brought a trace of coolness. Yi Qian listened to Captain Lei's words in one ear and out the other. Other than a slight smile, she did not say much. If she did not say anything, it was impossible. Captain Lei, who failed to seduce her again, could only sigh again. In May, the temperature difference between morning and night in the Southwest Plateau was huge. Today, the highest temperature during the day was 21 degrees Celsius, but now was only 16 or 17 degrees Celsius. In the early hours of the morning, the temperature dropped to the lowest of 8 degrees Celsius. Yi Qian, who was drenched in sweat, was quite resistant to the cold. Even though he was drenched in sweat and his training uniform was completely soaked, he did not feel much of the cold as he walked in the slightly chilly night. She didn't say anything, so Captain Lei and the other male soldiers didn't think much about it. They walked all the way from the field to the canteen. They had already finished reporting the 2-hour intensive training in Yiqian in the evening. When they arrived at the canteen, Xiao Tu and the other 2 male soldiers brought out the reserved food. There was soup, meat, and a small amount of vegetables. It was quite a good meal. After finishing her dinner in 5 minutes, Yiqian prepared to rest for half an hour before continuing her training. The female soldiers had completed 20 kilometers of armed cross-country training, so she couldn't just sit around doing nothing. She had to hurry up and train. Captain Lei had other arrangements. Yiqian felt that her heartbeat had not calmed down even after she boarded the transport plane. Captain Lei's other arrangement was for her to complete the night airborne with the male soldiers. The night airborne was supposed to start a week later, but she was going to start it in advance. The feeling of airborne at night was completely different from airborne during the day. The risk factor was multiplied, the ground vision was smaller, and it was not easy to observe the ground during the landing process. It was easy to land damage, such as hanging from trees, falling off cliffs, falling into water, injuries. These were all very likely to happen. In order to avoid such injuries, in addition to judging and grasping the timing of grounding, it also required a strong psychological quality and parachute skills. Captain Lei thought that Yiqian had both, so she could enter the night airborne training in advance. Chapter 51:31. Yiqian's night descent was a last-minute arrangement. Even Xiao Tu and the other 3 male soldiers who were responsible for her training did not know about it beforehand. Even when Captain Lei told Yiqian to prepare for tonight's night descent in the cafeteria, Xiao Tu thought that Yiqian really only needed to prepare. Before leaving the cafeteria, Xiao Tu smiled and joked with Yiqian, "You can prepare well and complete the night descent in a week. Let the female soldiers see how you, an army soldier, can perfectly surpass them." Xiao Tu's joking words made Yiqian almost think that he misunderstood Captain Lei's meaning. Captain Lei simply slapped Xiao Tu on the back of his head. "You talk nonsense so fast. Quickly take Yiqian to prepare." "Yes." Xiao Tu rubbed the back of his head that was slapped. "Captain, can you hit me gently like a rubber ball? It hurts so much." "Oh, you still know how to feel pain. I thought your brain was made of wood. Get out of here. Gather at 7:30. You still have 10 minutes. Yiqian confirmed that he really was not preparing, but really going to perform the night descent. It was not until Yi Jian carried her parachute and her name appeared on the list of people who would complete the night landing that Xiao Tu realized that Yi Jian would really be landing with him tonight. This was a little shocking. Seeing Yi Jian quickly boarding the transport plane, his back was calm like a veteran who had experienced thousands of night descent. Xiao Tu, who was carrying the parachute, was rather worried and said to Captain Lei, "Captain, aren't you a little too bold? No matter how good Yi Jian is, she has only been training for less than 2 months. What if something happens by arranging for her to perform the night descent? How do we explain it to the army? Not to mention the army, even our division commander will not be able to explain it. They will skin us alive." Captain Lei was the last to board the plane. He saw Yi Jian's every move as he boarded the plane. Hearing this, he smiled and asked Xiao Tu, "Then when do you think is the best time to perform the night descent?" Xiao Tu said seriously, "No matter what, we have to see how the next week's training goes. In any case, we have to train for 2 months. It's safer. Your point is that it's not time yet, so you can't arrange for Yi Jian to descend at night?" Captain Lei asked again. "Other than the time being inappropriate, is there anything else that's inappropriate?" The main point was that the timing wasn't too suitable. Xiao Tu shook his head. "Everything else is fine. I just feel that the timing is a little too rushed. We suddenly decided to arrange for her to descend at night. I don't know if she's mentally prepared." "Then did you see Yi Jian panic just now?" "No. That back view is like that of a veteran who has gone through hundreds of night raids. She's calm and composed." Xiao Tu chuckled. "Don't say. Her mental fortitude is definitely strong. My hands and feet were trembling the first time I did a night descent." So, Captain Lei patted Xiao Tu on the shoulder and said earnestly, "So, she's better than you. In less than 2 months, Her comprehensive ability has improved faster than your half a year's training. Accept your fate, boy. Wait for her to leave you behind in 2 years. Xiao Tu was stunned. It took several paratroopers to board the transport plane to react. Captain, you can't make fun of me like this. It's also not bad for me to complete a night parachute descent in half a year. Captain Lei glanced at Xiao Tu with a look that said, "You boy, are you retarded? So what? Yi Qian can complete it in less than 2 months. 3 comprehensive training in less than 2 months is equal to your half a year's training. Your good is just tofu dregs in front of her." It was not a blow to Xiao Tu, but it was the truth. Chapter 51:32. Although this was indeed the case, Little Head was still shocked. He looked at Captain Lei pitifully and begged to be let off. "Captain, I'm just worried about Yi Qian's safety. You're too cruel. Why are you bringing up old scores? Don't you always teach us to look forward? Let bygones be bygones." Little Head used to have a lot of opinions about Yi Qian, but now he was like a little follower. What if he didn't get Yi Qian to join the airborne troops and brought this kid back to the army instead? Captain Lei, who was worried about Little Head's betrayal, sneered. "You're worried about Yi Qian's safety during the night parachute landing. That's fine, but you can't doubt whether she's qualified for the night landing. As her instructor, you should know better than anyone whether she can do it or not. Look at Guancheng and Ding Xiaoping. Before the two of them gathered, they told me that they wanted to ask me if I could let Yi Jian complete a night landing with the male soldiers in advance. Both of them think that with Yi Jian's current level, she is qualified for a night parachute landing. Why are you still doubting it? Are you doubting Yi Qian's ability? Or are you doubting your teaching ability? Are you doubting that you didn't teach Yi Qian well? Your words are really irrefutable." The defeated team leader surrendered. He straightened his chest and answered confidently, "Captain, I don't have any doubts, and I believe that Yi Jian will be able to complete the night paragliding perfectly." They were a certain distance away from the transport plane, so the rumbling sound did not affect their communication. Captain Lei saw that Little Head had good awareness and raised his hand to let him go. All the airborne troops boarded the plane. Captain Lei, who was the last aboard, strode onto the transport plane and sat down in the empty seat next to Yi Qian. They were all reserved in advance. Before Yi Qian boarded the plane, he knew that Captain Lei would sit with him. The tail of the plane was closed and the cabin was sealed. With the guidance of the command tower and the flag of the soldiers on the ground, the large transport plane carrying 140 people raised its nose and rushed into the smoky blue night. This time, the nightfall was arranged at the back of the city. The transport aircraft would first fly over the brightly lit city before entering the nightfall area. The young paratroopers sitting in the transport plane didn't have much expression on their faces. After passing through 3 checkpoints, they were all very calm. They sat with their parachutes in their arms, quietly waiting for the signal light to turn on. Then they jumped out of the plane and into the hazy sky that they protected with their lives. After sitting down, Captain Lei looked around at the young parachutists around him, and then asked Yi Qian with a smile, "How are you feeling? Are you excited at all?" He didn't ask Yi Qian if he was afraid, because he really couldn't see any fear on Yi Qian's face. Yi Qian smiled with the corners of his mouth raised high. "I was quite excited when I was in the parachute area, but then I calmed down when I got to the rest area." As if recalling something, Yi Qian curved his lips again and revealed a deep smile. His neat and white teeth were like seashells. "The instructor knew that it was my first nightfall, so he specially checked my parachute bag again. He told me that nightfall was more exciting than sunfall, and the scenery was more magnificent. He told me to look down at the earth when I landed. No matter how scared I was, I would gradually calm down because of the land. I'm now looking forward to what kind of night scenery I'll see when I land. It will definitely be more beautiful than the night view I usually see on a plane." For his first nightfall, Yi Qian wasn't afraid, only looking forward to it. Chapter 51:33. The airborne troops were known for their ability to fight in all areas, and night combat was an important indicator of airborne compatibility. Night parachute training was an important training subject, and she was eager to complete it. There was no fear, only anticipation, no panic, only calmness. This was the special female soldier from the Army that Division Commander Kong spent a lot of effort to poach from the Army to train with the female airborne troops. When you see her smile, you can't help but be convinced, believe, and approve of her. Captain Lei laughed. The scenery from the plane is completely different from the scenery you see when you jump up from the transport. The former is a still painting, and the latter will let you understand why you have to protect this land. It will let you know what the lights of the homes are. Captain Lei didn't say anything unnecessary. Yi Qian wasn't a recruit, and she had a strong psychological quality. She had long passed the stage of needing to be comforted and given courage. He just needed to wait for her to complete the night parachute. As the transport plane flew past, the female soldiers on the ground looked up at the sky. It was a transport plane flying out of the military airport, and it was arranging for the male soldiers to do the night parachute again. Only when the transport plane flew out of sight did the female soldiers withdraw their envious gazes. When will it be their turn? Keep up, keep up. Keep the formation. Which way? Why are you looking back? Keep up. Can't you see that you're falling behind? The squad leader, standing on the side of the road, stared at the formation and urged the female soldiers to keep up to avoid falling behind. The 20 kilometers of armed cross-country at night was much more dangerous than during the day. As the squad leader, she had to keep an eye on them at all times. Guo Chui, who fell behind, heard the squad leader's urging. She swung her arms and carried the heavy parachute bag and backpack to catch up with the team. She looked back to see if the only figure who didn't join the team was catching up. If she caught up, she would complete the 20 kilometers of armed cross-country with her. Unfortunately, they left the team for more than an hour and didn't see Yi Qian catch up. It seemed that she was really absent tonight. Look back. Yi Qian won't appear. Save your energy. Lu Hui, who was at the front, said in a low voice. She pulled Guo Chui along so that she could catch up with the formation. Don't think that I'm always picking on Yi Qian because I can't stand her. If it were the Air Corps, I definitely wouldn't pick on her. Of course, in the beginning, I did target her for personal reasons. But later, I stopped. I'm not blind. I can see all her efforts. But it's different here. This is the special forces of the airborne troops. We are now special scouts, the most dangerous soldiers in the entire Air Force. No matter how hard she works, it's useless. If she really goes to the battlefield in the future, she will only die. Yi Qian started later than us. You've seen for yourself how capable she is. So what's the point of working hard? You still haven't made any progress, and your abilities are limited. Why are you still keeping them around? Are you keeping them around to die? Right now, we're still in the basic training of the Special Forces. In about a month, we'll enter the intensive training. She can't even keep up with the basic training. Do you still expect her to keep up with the intensive training? Force training has a sacrifice rate. With her current ability, is the possibility of her appearing in the sacrifice rate high? Very high. One of our Air Corps' female soldiers had sacrificed herself because of this. Don't think that we're always picking on Yi Qian because of personal reasons. We want to kick her out of the class. As long as she has a little hope, we will help her. During this period of time, haven't we helped her enough? It's a lot. Chapter 51:34. Lu Hui spoke quickly. She pulled Guo Chui and walked quickly. She said a lot. Guo Chui also heard a lot, but she doubted every word she said. Targeting Yi Qian was not targeting Yi Qian as a person, but targeting Yi Qian's personal abilities? What was the difference? Why did she feel like there was no difference? Targeting Yi Qian because Yi Qian's personal abilities were not up to par, and if he continued to stay, he might be sacrificed. This sentence struck a chord in her heart. She used to be in her old unit. Once a soldier was found to be unsuitable to become a paratrooper, they would usually be transferred to the logistics team. The logistics team also had day and night paratroopers, but there were fewer of them. It was very suitable for an ordinary and honest soldier like Yi Qian. Lu Hui was not the only one who thought this way. She had also considered whether she should mention this to Yi Qian, but she did not know why, but she felt that Yi Qian should not be like this. She felt that something was off. After being questioned, Lu Hui rolled her eyes at Guo Chui, who had been silent all this while. She pursed her lips and said, "I know that my mouth is quite annoying, but if being annoying can save a life, then I will continue to be annoying." As she said this, she put on a stern face, revealing the sharp expression she used to criticize Yi Qian. "It's up to you whether you believe me or not. In any case, I have made myself clear. In the future, as long as Yi Qian does not improve, I will continue to criticize him until he leaves." Guo Chui had a good relationship with the female soldiers. Although she was a little unhappy with Lu Hui, who loved to target Yi Qian, their relationship was not bad. As long as it did not have anything to do with Yi Qian, their relationship was still okay. After saying so much, Guo Chui was not a cold-hearted person. She said whatever was on her mind. "If you don't want to see Yi Qian get into trouble, then why don't you just say it properly? You're the most annoying person in the class. All day long, you love to say that Yi Qian is not up to par. Even when you criticize Yi Qian, you act like a landlord. Just looking at you makes me angry." "I act like a landlord? I was being serious." Lu Hui was so angry that she pinched Guo Chui's arm. "Little girl, is that how you see me? I've been helping you for nothing." Guo Chui, who had a smile on her face, pinched her arm back. "Don't flatter yourself. You're mean and mean. Only Yi Jian didn't do anything to you because she's honest. If you continue to bully her like this, she'll lose her temper one day." "Tis." Lu Hui snorted softly and coldly said, "I wish you would throw a tantrum. In any case, let me see a little bit of bravery in her." In the end, there was nothing. I couldn't see my courage, and I couldn't see any room for improvement. All he does is train by himself all day long, and he can't even hit a single stroke. Chapter 51:35. Lu Hui didn't think that Yi Jian was weird at all. She did everything slowly and even spoke slowly. She was anxious just by looking at her. Was it hard to be faster and bolder? Guo Chui, who had opened her mouth, sorted out the things that she thought were strange. Through her observation of Yi Jian, she told Lu Hui all the strange things that she felt were strange. Lu Hui's eyes widened, her mouth gaped, her face was full of expressions, and her face was full of shock. "No way, no way. You're thinking too much. That's impossible. It shouldn't be. That doesn't make sense. That's definitely not possible. You're definitely thinking too much. Now that you mention it, it does seem a bit weird." His expression kept changing, and so did his face. At first, he didn't approve of it, but in the end, he felt a little strange. The whole process took 10 minutes. The armed off-road vehicles were allowed to talk to each other as they walked. Talking could distract them from their tiredness. If they really felt tired, they could encourage each other. Therefore, talking while walking was not considered a violation of the rules as long as it did not delay the progress of the main group. Of course, this was only if there were no civilians present and they couldn't be seen by civilians. Yi Qian's airborne unit was located in the Southwest Highlands. There weren't many people there, and they might not even meet a single civilian after walking for an entire night. However, the female squad leader chose to walk on the main road instead of the rugged trails. This was a last-minute decision to prioritize safety. Along the main road, they could see roads leading into Tibet. At night, they could occasionally see trucks passing by. In the southwest of May, as the night deepened, the temperature gradually dropped. A gust of wind blew from the snowy mountains, causing Lu Hui, who was sweating profusely, to shiver. She held Guo Chui's hand and swallowed with difficulty. "After hearing what you said, I also think it's a bit weird. Have you told the class leader?" Her voice was dry and tense. "No, I've only told you." Guo Chui sighed. "I'm afraid I'm thinking too much. Now it seems like there really is a problem." Lu Hui suddenly grabbed Guo Chui's hand and walked forward quickly. "Let's go. Let's talk to the class leader. After listening to your analysis, I broke out in a cold sweat." Say, do you think Yi Qian really has a powerful background? It was very likely. Otherwise, how could an army soldier like her join our Air Force? Also, every time she is the last to return to the dormitory and the first to leave the dormitory. Now, every time after the daytime training, Captain Lei immediately sends someone to call her away. This has been going on for half a month. As she spoke, Lu Hui slapped her own head. My pig brain. Every day, she thought that Yi Qian must have gone to slack off to get in because of his connections. Why didn't she think that there was actually a big problem? What do you think is a big problem inside? Guo Chui shook off her hand after a few steps. Don't be in such a hurry. Let's think about it before we report it to the class leader. Lu Hui panicked and pulled Guo Chui's wrist. It's a matter of life and death. How can I not be anxious? If she really has a great background, then wouldn't I be done for? Guo Chui avoided her and frowned. Why don't I like what you're saying? You're scared because Yi Qian has a powerful background. What if she doesn't? Will you continue to target her? Chapter 51:36. Guo Chui didn't want to bother with Lu Hui anymore. According to her, she was a classic example of bullying the weak and fearing the strong. She shook her off and walked straight ahead, ignoring Lu Hui, who was chasing after her. Lu Hui was also angry. She huffed and huffed as she chased after Guo Chui for dozens of meters before finally catching up to her. Why are you like an explosion? You explode at the slightest provocation. Can't you just listen to me properly? What else do you have to say? I've already said it clearly. You're bullying the weak and fearing the strong. You're bullying Yi Qian. You just like to target her. Guo Chui was a little out of breath. The 15 kilograms of weight wasn't light. Walking dozens of meters could crush a person's shoulders. Lu Hui, who was angered to the point of laughing, completely lost her temper. She didn't even have the urge to get angry. Great aunt, can you not get the main point wrong? Besides, when have I ever bullied Yi Qian? Oh, she failed the training and I can't say anything about it? She made a mistake and I can't criticize her? When did you see me bullying her in my life? What's the real bullying? I don't take her seriously at all. I don't take her seriously? Do I target her even after I scold her? Did you see it? When she failed the training, why didn't you see me correcting it with her? Why do you only see me scolding her? Tell me, is your brain made of tofu, or are you too delicate? Guo Chui was so angry at the last sentence that her lips trembled. Her eyes were filled with anger as she shouted back. Lu Hui, watch your words. I'm not Yi Qian. I won't let you say whatever you want. Huh, if you were Yi Qian, she wouldn't even talk back to me today. She can't even take it. I really don't know if your old unit was too good. Lu Hui rolled her eyes. Her eyeballs almost couldn't be seen. Haven't you been bullied when a new recruit entered the camp? Haven't you been yelled at and scolded by the veterans? Haven't you been criticized or criticized? Let me tell you, in our 18th division, this is normal. A strict teacher produces a fine student. Do you understand? You keep saying that I'm targeting her. If I was really targeting her, I would have complained to Captain Lei every day. With that brain of yours, it's hard for you to even speak. When Guo Chui, who was so angry that smoke was about to come out of her head, heard this, most of the anger in her heart instantly dissipated. During the first 3 months of the recruit's enlistment, all the instructors were amiable and pleasant, as if they were bathing in the spring breeze, so that the initial hesitation of joining the army could be completely eliminated. 3 months later, when he left the company, he realized that the hardships he had suffered 3 months ago were not considered hardships. Only when he left the company did he know what hardships were. The instructor was no longer as gentle as a spring breeze. She was so strict that you wanted to stab her in private. The class leader was slightly better, but don't expect her to protect you at all times. If you were outstanding, you would be the boss. If you were to drag the class down and annoy the instructor, your life would be so bad that you would lose a layer of skin every week. The fastest would be a month, and the slowest would be 3 months. It was guaranteed that you would be able to turn over a new leaf. This was also why some parents had headaches over their children and wanted to send their children to the army. The army was a melting pot. It could melt all the bad habits in your body. On the day that you came out of the furnace, you would have outstanding thoughts, courage, the spirit to endure hardships, the spirit to work hard, the spirit to fight, and the spirit to sacrifice yourself for the people. At that time, you would be a true soldier, a qualified soldier that could make your comrades feel at ease, the people feel at ease, and the country feel at ease. And Yi Qian, clearly he was not qualified. Chapter 51:37. Who would believe an unqualified soldier? No one would believe her. Even her closest comrades would be suspicious of her. As long as she didn't change, she would be ostracized. Guo Chui's breathing gradually stabilized, and she pursed her lips. Lu Hui saw that Guo Chui remained silent, and knew that her words were effective, so her tone naturally softened. Okay, don't look like I owe you money. The problem right now is that we need to figure out why Yi Qian joined our airborne unit. There's definitely something wrong. Even if she doesn't have a background, she must have an ulterior motive. I don't care if she has a background or not. No matter how big her background is, I didn't do anything to her, so I'm not afraid. After hearing your advice today, I'll have to observe her carefully in the future. Then you observe her carefully. Although Guo Chui agreed with what Lu Hui said, she still felt uncomfortable in her heart. She replied stiffly and walked away. She planned to talk to Yi Qian alone and ask her what she was thinking. Previously, the class leader and vice class leader both talked to her, but it didn't have much effect. She didn't know if it was because they were conflicted about transferring from the army to the Air Force. Anyways, she really felt that something was wrong with Yi Qian. The calmness she had when she saved her that day, and the calmness she had when she dealt with the problem, it was like she was a completely different person. Lu Hui caught up with the class leader and reported Guo Chui's suspicions. The class leader's reaction wasn't as big as Lu Hui's, so she calmed down after a while. Then, the class leader told the vice class leader. After talking for a while, the two of them began to suspect that there was something wrong with Yi Qian. Yi Qian, who was absent, was currently looking down at the ground. This wasn't the first time she looked down from above. She had taken a night flight countless times, and most of the time she got on the plane, she would seize the time to conserve energy for the upcoming ground battle. But this time, her eyes were wide open the entire time. She was completely focused on preparing to jump down from the plane. The transport flew through the dark sky over the mountains and into the sky above the city. The ground was lit up and the stars twinkled above. At this time, the pilot needed to maintain a high level of vigilance to avoid visual confusion and mistook the ground for a bright starry sky. The city outside the cabin was brightly lit. All the officers and soldiers inside the cabin were ready. The countdown to nightfall had begun. The transport plane soon arrived at the scheduled night landing airspace. The signal light lit up, and the soldier who jumped first stood up. He was the squad leader, and he led his comrades in the first batch of night landings. The cabin doors slowly opened, and a gust of wind blew in, bringing in fresh air. Yi Qian's eyes lit up. Soon, it will be your turn. Very soon. Captain Lei, who was sitting next to him, couldn't help but laugh when he saw this. So excited, not bad. Maintain your condition, and it will make your night descent even smoother. Yi Qian was confident in himself. He nodded vigorously and replied loudly, "Captain, don't worry. I guarantee that nothing will happen. I knew you'd be fine." Captain Lei raised his head and laughed out loud. Dance well. 1 week later, let the female soldiers know how powerful Yi Qian is. Even Captain Lei was so confident in her. Yi Qian smiled until her eyebrows curved like the crescent moon in the sky. Half a month's worth of training was focused on night landings, ensuring the safety of parachuting. Night departure, special operations, landing, and other subjects were all for her to practice so that she could catch up with the female soldiers as soon as possible. How could she let the teacher's hard work go to waste? How could she let her own efforts go to waste? The city lights in the distance flickered. With the command of the pilot, the first batch of paratroopers calmly jumped out of the cabin. The umbrellas opened and instantly disappeared into the thick night. Chapter 51:38. Yi Qian was already standing at the hatch. Soon, it would be her turn. From the hatch, she could see half of the sky above the city. Above her, the Milky Way was like a chain. Below her, there was an endless stream of traffic. It was a bustling scene in the mortal world. The lights were as bright as the stars. Fire dragons shuttled back and forth across the city. It was a road decorated with night lights. Jump! With a command, Yi Qian jumped down from the sky. It was said that paratroopers only had 19 seconds to live when they jumped from a high altitude. If they did not open their parachutes within 19 seconds, their lives would disappear. The sun rose the next day. Bang! The pure white parachute opened. Yi Qian, who was shuttling through the wind, stabilized her falling body. The parachute caught her body and ensured her survival. There was an inexplicable gloom in her chest. The moment she heard the parachute open, she felt her heart jump out her chest. The wind was clear and the moon was clear. Yi Qian had a smile that was clearer than the wind and brighter than the moon. Captain Xia, she succeeded. She was one step closer to her goal. Please wait for her. Wait for her. She will return to the team soon. She has been working hard to return to the team. Please believe in her. She will definitely return to the team early. She will not let you, or her comrades, wait for too long. Yi Qian smiled as the parachute fluttered in the night sky. He understood the brilliance of the Milky Way. The night wind no longer blew past his face. It became a gentle hand that gently caressed his body. There was no fear, only tranquility. The announcer's voice came from the earpiece, reminding Yi Qian to pay attention to the direction. Pull left with one hand, pull right with two hands. Remember to maintain the distance between the parachute and the parachute. After receiving the order, Yi Qian focused on operating the parachute in his hands. He pulled the lever to keep the parachute stable. He kept his body stable. Just like that, he rode the wind all the way to the expected landing zone. One after another, umbrellas bloomed under the bright, starry sky. In the pitch-black night sky, one after another, brave and fearless figures charged into the night and landed safely. Yi Qian, who was operating the parachute, was getting closer and closer to the ground. Finally, her feet touched the ground, and her body was propelled forward by inertia. Her steps were steady, and even her breathing was steady. Yi Qian quickly steadied herself until she stood up properly. As Yi Qian unraveled, the huge umbrellas fell to the ground, looking like undulating waves in the hazy starlight. Yi Qian quickly took off his parachutes and weapons, packed up his parachutes, and quickly gathered at the designated area. Yi Qian did not look like a paratrooper at all. His movements were practiced and orderly, without the slightest hint of panic. The landing area was quite empty. Yi Qian quickly rushed to the designated area, and so did the other paratroopers. Soon, all the paratroopers landed. The whistles sounded, and more than 100 night paratroopers were assembled. Each squad reported their numbers, and the numbers were verified. Yi Qian, here we are. Among the 100 or so male voices, a clear and cold female voice sounded. Captain Lei heard it and went over. He could not find Yi Qian in the dense crowd, but he knew that the brave female paratrooper was standing there. He used his best posture to tell her that she had completed the night, landing brilliantly. When they returned, it was already late in the night. The paratroopers who had reboarded the plane hugged their parachutes and closed their eyes to rest. Yi Qian, who had completed the night landing for the first time, also hugged her parachutes and fell asleep. Chapter 51:39. This time, Captain Lei did not look for Yi Qian to have a heart-to-heart talk. She was a female soldier who did not need to have a heart-to-heart talk from time to time. No, she was not an ordinary female soldier. She was a Special Forces soldier in the Army. The reason why Special Forces soldiers were special, why their combat ability and comprehensive ability were far superior to ordinary soldiers, was that they had already been through a lot of hardships and no longer needed special care. On Captain Lei's right sat Xiao Tu, on his right sat Guan Cheng, and on the opposite sat Ding Xiaoping. The three of them were Yi Qian's training instructors and also the elite soldiers of the Special Forces Scouts. Captain Lei, who did not look for Yi Qian, was looking for Xiao Tu to have a heart-to-heart talk about Yi Qian. How is it? Do you admit defeat? Do you admit that Yi Qian is much stronger than you and more powerful than you? Captain Lei said with a smile, and there was obvious banter in his tone. Now you have nothing to say. Xiao Tu rubbed his face and responded to Captain Lei with an "I refuse to chat" expression. Unfortunately, Captain Lei did not give him a chance to refuse and asked again, "As a man, is it difficult to admit that you are inferior to others?" The fact is, it's hard not to admit it. The captain did not want to let him go. Xiao Tu only felt bitter in his heart. With a bitter face and a bitter voice, he said, "My dear captain, please let me go. If I don't say it, it's the same as admitting it. Do you have to make me say it? As a man, you have to save some face. Can you save some face for me, please?" Face? Is it me saving face for you? You earned it yourself, understand? If the soldiers were not resting, Captain Lei would have laughed out loud. This stinking brat, who asked him to look down on Yi Qian before. Now it's a slap in the face, it hurts, it's embarrassing. Ha ha, I have to dampen his spirit. Looking down on female soldiers. He's suffering now. Cough. In fact, he himself was also quite embarrassed. In the past, he also looked down on female soldiers, thinking that they were timid. They usually looked good, but when they encountered a real problem, they would wilt. He thought so in his heart, but fortunately, he did not show it in action. Otherwise, it would be even more embarrassing. Captain Lei, who was secretly glad to save his face, smiled and let out a long sigh. No matter how good you are, there will always be someone better than you. Yi Jin is a female soldier. That's really going to change the world. I don't know what kind of army she will join in the future, and whether it's big enough to accommodate her. Xiao Tu, who had finally escaped from the sea of bitterness, was afraid that Captain Lei would turn back to him again. He quickly pulled himself together and said, "That must be one of the best special forces in the army. It is estimated that they will go to our country's special forces that have never been exposed." There was a mysterious and legendary shadow unit in the Air Force. Everyone came and went without a trace. It was said that this unit was not a complete unit. All of the shadows were usually serving in various air forces. Once there was a mission, they would immediately complete it and assemble. No one knew who they were. No one had seen their real faces, and no one knew where they came from. They were like shadows. When they came, there was no sound. When they left, there was no movement. Even if they really existed, there was no way to know. Captain Lei, whose eyes flashed slightly, slapped Xiao Tu's head fiercely. "What are you thinking about all day long? What shadow army? What unexposed special forces? What nonsense!" Chapter 5140. The two brothers, Xiao Tu and Tu, were the youngest in Captain Lei's team. Among them, Xiao Tu was the smartest, and his overall ability was relatively strong. Captain Lei, who was 5 years older than Xiao Tu, usually liked to tease Xiao Tu. Xiao Tu, who was hit in the head again, protested, "Boss, can you not hit my head every day? If one day you really hit my head, you'll have to take responsibility for me for the rest of my life." Zheng Cheng, who was sitting next to him with his eyes closed, couldn't help but open them when he heard this. He sincerely reminded Captain Lei, "Boss, he seems to want to rely on you for the rest of his life. Next time, don't expose your head. Just hit his leg." Xiao Tu bared his teeth. "Captain will be happy to take responsibility for me for the rest of my life. Go away. I'll kick you off the plane." Captain Lei laughed and kicked Xiao Tu. "Work hard, brat. Yi Qian is likely to catch up. You have to learn from her." He said to Zheng Cheng, "You too. You have to learn from Yi Qian. She has the kind of fighting spirit that many soldiers don't have. It's worth learning from all of us." Yi Qian's fighting spirit sometimes made Captain Lei a little scared. She was like an Iron Man. Even if she was so tired that she didn't even have the strength to raise her hand, she could still grit her teeth and persevere until the problem was solved. In her words, as long as the problem could be solved, she didn't want to stay overnight. He was ashamed of his inferiority. As the captain, he didn't have such a high awareness. Zheng Qing nodded and recalled that he was in charge of Yi Qian's training for half a month. He agreed with Captain Lei's words. I admit defeat to her fighting spirit. I really can't persevere like her. After a slight pause, Zheng Qing narrowed his eyes and whispered, Boss, what's Yi Qian's background? Does her family have a military background? Her foundation is too strong. She seems to have been training in the army since she was young. There must be elders in her family in the army. Captain Lei didn't know what Yi Qian's background was or what her family was like. The personal information provided by the army was really only her gender, name, school she graduated from, and the awards she won during her school years. There was really nothing else. We don't care whether she has a background or not. Just take care of yourself and learn from her. Take a break. We still have training tomorrow morning. Captain Lei, who was also unaware, closed his eyes while holding the umbrella. He seemed a little tired. Zheng Qing and Xiao, too, looked at each other thoughtfully. Then they also closed their eyes while hugging their umbrellas. That's right, I just need to take care of myself. Captain Lei, who closed his eyes, did not really rest. Xiao Tu's unintentional words fell into his heart, and there were still ripples in his heart. Shadow Troop. Could it be that Division Commander Kong had such a plan? Yi Qian was a soldier who was strong in all aspects. She could still fight her way through if she were to switch to another branch of the military. Only by joining the strongest special forces would her talents not be wasted. Perhaps Division Commander Kong really had such a plan. Would the army agree? He was afraid that it would be difficult. The returning transport plane was slightly bumpy. The paratroopers who had completed the night landing were all hugging their parachutes tightly in their sleep. Their bodies were swaying, and they were very sleepy. The night sky was silent. The soldiers returned to the army. The night passed quietly, but not peacefully. Captain Lei found Yi Qian's figure in a group of male soldiers. He saw her talking and laughing with several paratroopers. Everything was normal. With a smile in his eyes, he didn't ask Yi Qian alone what she felt. There was no need to ask. Her demeanor and behavior already told him that everything was normal and there was no problem. Chapter 51-41. After gathering, they led the team back to the dormitory. The male soldiers returned in groups, while Yi Qian returned to the dormitory alone. Before the female soldiers came, there was no female dormitory in the base. There wasn't even a female bathroom. Now, the female dormitory was renovated from the family dormitory. Fortunately, there was a bathroom on every floor of the family dormitory, which solved the personal problem. Yi Qian, see you in the morning. See you in the morning. See you in the morning. The family dormitory was in the opposite direction of the male soldiers' dormitory. A few Special Forces scouts who knew Yi Qian waved goodbye to Yi Qian. Facing a group of male soldiers, Yi Qian, who had always been natural and unrestrained, also waved goodbye. It was 3 in the morning. There were only 2.5 hours left before the morning assembly. If they seized the time, they could still have a good rest. During the anti-Japanese war, our army was known for its night battles. In the new era, night training still played a large role in the military training, and night training did not affect the day training. No matter how late the night training was, they would still assemble after dawn and begin the day's training. 2.5 hours later, Yi Qian would meet them again. Yi Qian returned to the dormitory alone. There was no one in the dormitory. The female soldiers who were on the 20-kilometer armed cross-country trip had not returned yet. Looking at the time, it was a bit past 3 in the morning. It should be soon. After lying down for about 10 minutes, the 14 female soldiers dragged their tired bodies back to the dormitory. The assistant commander turned on the lights and quickly turned them off. She saw Yi Qian lying on the bed. Keep it down. Yi Qian is sleeping. The assistant commander reminded the female soldiers who came over. Lu Hui, who came in after them, heard this and whispered, "We are tired like cows," but she climbed into bed early to sleep. Seeing that there is no one in the dormitory, she can still sleep. I don't know if she has a big heart or is she stupid. She wants to be accepted by others like this? Is that possible? She doesn't think about improving herself every day. Everyone is training while she goes back to the dormitory to sleep. How could she face the troops who trained her and the people who trusted the soldiers? Liu Hui's face darkened a few degrees. If it weren't for the assistant supervisor reminding everyone to be gentle, he really wanted to rush to the bedside to wake her up and ask her what she wanted to do. We came back so late. If she doesn't sleep, is she going to wait for us? Guo Chui retorted. Then, she lowered her voice even more. Did you forget what we said on the way back? Speak less and observe more. Liu Hui glanced at a certain spot in the darkness. She opened her mouth but closed it again. She had almost forgotten about it. After a while, he swallowed the anger in his chest and said in a muffled voice, I don't know if you're thinking too much. When I see her, why do I feel that she's just like that? There's nothing strange about it. Liu Hui, are you planning to stay up all night? The assistant teacher spoke in a low voice, as though he was afraid Yi Qian would hear him. You're the most talkative person in class. Why don't you rest early? Liu Hui, who was called out by the assistant teacher, picked up her basin and left the dormitory. Fine, I won't say anything. The more I say, the more mistakes I make. The 15 female soldiers were divided into 2 teams. Each team rested in their own dormitory. Yi Qian's bed was the innermost. She slept on the top bunk. Below her was a female soldier named Fang Xing. She wasn't tall and came from Chuan province, which was known as the land of abundance. Fang Xing glanced at Yi Qian, who slept on the top bunk, and subconsciously lightened her movements. Although they doubted and targeted Yi Qian's personal ability, it was only during training. When they returned to the dormitory, they didn't deliberately make things difficult for Yi Qian or bully Yi Qian. They just didn't talk to her much. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.